but you're not.
All right, and we are live. Hello, and welcome to the 31st episode of the Gaming Perspective podcast. It's a big episode. Nothing's happened in the industry this week. There's nothing to talk about. No. It's been a slow week. So we're going to get right into introductions, and we have a special guest this week. So we'll get right into it. Jared is still off. We wish him the best as he continues his pursuit of his degree and schooling and all the great stuff he's working on right now. But first, the constant in this show, if nothing else, from Windows Central, Android Central, and iMore, Mr. Samuel worth 7.5 billion Tolbert. 7.5 billion, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm constant, so I got to be worth something, right?
Yeah.
Hey, everyone! It is good to be back, and I have to say, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. We thought we were going to be talking next-gen strategy, and then Microsoft dropped a bomb on us, so we will dive right into that. I promise that is the first topic on the docket, and I swear, when we lined up our guest, we didn't know this was happening at all. We did not know this was. We literally were just going to pick his brain about next-gen launch, but then we got something infinitely more interesting. So it is what it is. Good to be here on a Friday evening. Let's get right to it.
Absolutely. And also introducing from the sunny land of Florida and the Basement Radio Arcade Podcast, Mr. Eric Jackson.
Yeah, I feel so bad like every time you guys introduce me like that or you introduce me that way because I'm like, nah, not right now, man. Like, we got like many hurricanes going on all day. Like it's total Florida, like 10 minutes, bright and sunny, and then you walk inside, come back out, and the palm trees are sideways, the wind's blowing. Yeah. So it's gonna be that kind of weekend. Lots of rain off and on. Yeah, they said tomorrow's gonna be a total washout. So hopefully Sunday will be a little brighter. But yeah,
absolutely. For context for people, it was 6 degrees Celsius when I woke up the other morning here. So that's like 44 degrees Fahrenheit if you're American. And and they're like, this is our fall. And I'm like, this sucks. This sucks.
Yeah, our fall is still 95.
I can't. If I sit in 95, you literally have to put me in an ice cooler.
No, Nick, we had a cold front come through on Wednesday. You want to know what the cold front was?
Sure.
85.
Oh my God.
I couldn't live in Florida, man. I'd just be in a pool of ice the whole time. So also returning since his last time he was on the show on episode 13. You may know him around from Twitter or his awesome YouTube channel. Introducing Benji. How's it going, my friend?
Hello. Thank you for having me back, guys. Had a blast last time. It is so good to see you again. I am pretty pumped, let me tell you.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. And finally, if you don't know me, I'm Nicholas Downey. You can find me over on Twitter at Undead3XVI. I'm the assistant editor-in-chief for lordsofgaming.net. So we got to dive right into this stuff. There is a lot to talk about in terms of next generation. But first, we've got to talk about a little company called Zenimax Media. I am not often a huge proprietor of hardware companies buying publishers. But however, as a massive id Software nerd, a Fallout nerd, and everything else, I am incredibly happy right now. So in a surprise move on a random Monday morning, because PlayStation takes Tuesdays and Xbox takes Mondays, apparently.
Yep.
And a small announcement that rolled out from Phil Spencer and company is that Xbox has acquired ZeniMax Media for the small fund of $7.5 billion, which, according to Sam, that was in cash as well, correct?
No stock. Yeah, that's important. Yeah. No stock options, no trading, just cold, hard. It's the literal war chest meat. Everyone joked about it until Phil was like, you know what? Let's make it actually happen. Just roll the dump trucks up, boys. Keep them coming. Insane.
Was that in the sock drawer?
Yeah. A little change in the couch. Scrounge around while Satya's out of the office. Yeah, it's just to reemphasize that's not Bethesda. That's Zenimax. That's Bethesda Game Studios, which has 4 different studios. That's Arcane. That's Machine Games. That's id Software. That's Alpha Dog, Roundhouse, which used to be known as Human Head before they got closed and then they got reopened. That's I don't like saying this lightly, but that it's utterly bonkers. I wake up every day since it happened, and I still don't comprehend it. I'm like, oh, holy crap, that actually happened. It's insane.
Well,
Yeah.
for context, though, Microsoft just woke up one day and basically announced that they had acquired more first-party studios than they had back in 2016, 2017, essentially.
Jeez. That's a good way of putting it, dude. That's a good way of putting it.
So let's do roundtable first. Initial impressions of what you thought of the acquisition, because let's face it, this is one of the very rare occurrences in the gaming industry where we didn't have precursor leaks to this.
Right.
This was literally people woke up and went, "Whoa." Like even Jeff Grubb said, "Oh, I guess that's what all the money was for. I didn't think it was an acquisition, but there it goes." So, what did you guys think of the acquisition, and how do you feel about the acquisition as it sits right now? We'll start with Benji to start.
Yeah. So first thing that I thought whenever I read it was that it wasn't true. Like I thought it was not real, but I was seeing it posted all over my Twitter. I woke up and I look at my phone, and literally the first thing I see everywhere is that Microsoft is acquiring Zenimax and Bethesda. And I'm like, dude, there is just no way. And I'm reading, I'm realizing it's legit. And my first thought was that Microsoft's definitely taking it to a new level, going for a whole publisher. I mean, that is a whole different ballgame than what they were doing before, right? We've seen them buy a bunch of developers. We've seen them buy developers that they have, long histories with, which we'll go into with Bethesda. I'm sure how they have a long history with Bethesda as well. But we'd seen Playground Games and companies like this that, some of them weren't surprising at all. Maybe a few of them were, but it was a shocking announcement. I think it's a great move. I'm sure we're going to go way more into detail. So, I'm not going to blow up the whole beginning with it. But yeah, I was shocked. I think it's a good buy. And they busted out the war chest. It was a reminder when I saw that price tag. It was like, yeah, Microsoft, when they want to, can just buy whatever they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, as the biggest fan of the, as you quote put it, the butter knife swinging in the Elder Scrolls series, what did you think about the acquisition of ZeniMax?
Oh man, I made it to work. I remember this. I went to work and I got a notification on my Apple Watch. And all I kind of saw was part of it. It said I saw ZeniMax, Microsoft purchase, something to that effect. Because I read it really quick and I was like, whoa. So I put my stuff down, answered whatever question I need to answer. And I went to a corner. I just kind of looked and I was like, what the? I was like, whoa. Yeah, it was like, and like Benji, it was shock. It wasn't shocking the fact that they're like a partnership now. I'm like, okay, this is kind of what they do. I'm just like, I looked at the price and I said, damn. It was like that. Yeah. Like Benji, this is just like, I just pictured, like we were just joking a moment ago, like Sachi is on his way out. He's like, hey Phil, I'm heading out for the weekend. There's some there's $7.5 billion on the dresser. You want to buy some and let me know how things go. And yeah, so it was just like, wow, man. But I think that was a great acquisition for them. It kind of makes sense. Mm-hmm. In the long run. I know we'll get deeper into what it all may mean, but yeah, just and Sam will tell you, like, the first thing we kind of said to each other was we started thinking like Arcane.
Yep.
Where's that gonna go now? Because you know how I feel about like Bethesda proper. I'm like, whatever, the Fallout parts of it, but I'm down with the machine games and the Arcane and all that stuff. So yeah, good stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, my feelings for anyone who is here as the resident Arcane stan alongside Eric, my feelings are known. I didn't believe it when I saw it. I won't say when I saw it or if when I saw it was before it happened, but I will say I didn't believe it. And I still didn't believe it even after the news came out. But I will say, and we'll go more into in depth on this, I guess. I think in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense. I think in hindsight, this isn't just Microsoft going, hey, let's buy a publisher. Like, there is a lot of shared history here. There are a lot of things, the stars sort of aligned to make this happen. And I think this is something else we'll talk about later. I think people need to calm down about, oh no, the industry is falling. Everyone's buying up publishers. Like, all right, chill, please, because that's not exactly what's going on here. But nonetheless, it's a baller move, and there's no way to play that. Like, it is a baller move.
Yeah. And see, I am a massive Bethesda fan. Like I cannot put into words because I started in the PC gaming space. Bethesda's been such a big deal in the PC gaming space before it was even a big deal in the console space. So like I'm a huge fan of their RPGs. I love Arcane. I love machine games. I'm like one of the biggest id Software nerds online. So like I know a lot of people get really hyped about studios getting bought because they're like, yeah, exclusive games. I'm just really happy that there's a lot of creative talent that's now financially secure.
Exactly.
Particularly Arcane in that group.
Yes.
If we're going to talk about finances, they're the ones that, to me, were a little before this. You had to wonder.
I mean, let's be real. They made three, actually. Let's call it for what it is. Three, in my opinion, of the best games this generation. Dishonored 2, Prey, and then Death of the Outsider. Also in the Dishonored universe. But also, let's be real. None of those games sold well.
Nope.
Yeah, that's a travesty.
All three. And you can go beyond Arcane. Wolfenstein, the first one, the New Order sold well, but Wolfenstein 2 didn't. The new Colossus didn't.
Definitely missed expectations for sure.
For sure. I know Doom overperformed. Doom did better, and I don't know how you feel about this, Benji, but I almost feel like Doom bought them a little more time. Like they were trying, they were doing some things. Like the way you look at how in the last couple of years they pivoted to, Fallout 76, it's a service with microtransactions. Doom Eternal is going to have post-launch DLC. It almost feels like they were trying to forestall the inevitable. They were trying to without making any cuts. And props to them, because I know a lot of companies would just make cuts immediately when something They didn't. They didn't lay anyone from Arcane off. They didn't lay anyone from Machine Games or whatever off.
Yeah.
But
they were going, to be frank, it was like one of those scenarios where and this is something that I think will be interesting if we see it somewhat, I don't want to say like fixed, but one thing that probably does need to be streamlined is that the rate that Bethesda Game Studios releases titles. I mean, they're going very long periods of time. And I understand, but I mean, going 10 years without an Elder Scroll, by the time 6 gets here, I mean, you cannot do that in modern, unless you're Grand Theft Auto. Outside of that, I mean, they need to get some of their bigger IPs out quicker. And I think they were in a scenario where, maybe a few games underperformed. And then also it'd been so long. I mean, we haven't had like a big, huge Bethesda since Fallout 4. So you're going years and years without that juggernaut launch. So
for sure. For sure, man. And speaking of Bethesda, proper Bethesda Game Studios, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that Microsoft, as best I can see it, now has the majority of the Western RPG market. They have Bethesda Game Studios proper. They have Obsidian, which is funny. Like that is just funny. There's going to be some interesting conversations going on at the round table meeting there. Like, hey, Todd, who missed the 85 Metacritic now? Like already.
About those bonuses, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk, Phil. But they've got them, like that's incredible. Then they've got In Exile. Then they've got Playground's second team. Like, good Lord, y'all, who else is even left? I know there's like Larian and CD Projekt Red, obviously, but you got those two.
You got Eurodevs, but that's you still got your European RPG developers like CD Projekt Red, Larian, Warhorse, and things like that. But like in terms of like if you're talking North America, there's nothing.
Just the only other one's BioWare, but they're under EA anyways. But they're the only other really big. Like if you want to talk like AAA level production RPGs outside of Microsoft for Western, you're basically looking at CD Projekt Red, BioWare, and maybe Larian. Like that's your slim pickings. That after that, you're down into like the AA tier. You know what I mean? Yeah, they have like the AAA Western on lock.
It's actually kind of brilliant. As a Fallout fan, there's something that makes my heart warm about the fact that like Brian Fargo and In Exile, which basically kickstarted the Fallout franchise, and then you've got Bethesda proper, who did Fallout 3, Fallout 4, and then you've got Obsidian, who did Fallout New Vegas. Having all those teams sing in one pocket, I'm like, all right, now just Fallout New Vegas 2. Just come on, a little bit. But no, the Western RPG market, they've got cornered. The FPS side of things too, like something I want to talk about that not a lot of people covered. I know Windows Central did a really fantastic article on their Orion Stream Tech that Zenimax has the ownership of via id Software. The thing is this buyout made a lot of sense, and more in terms of not just content, is also technology. So we've seen Microsoft has been a big proprietor of, for those that don't pay attention as much, as Microsoft GameStack. Technically, IdTech 7 is part of Microsoft GameStack now. Yep. There's something kind of terrifying that Microsoft first party has access to IdTech 7 technically now.
Yeah, I sent out a tweet about that. I sent out a tweet about how, hey, this is an amazing cutting edge engine. I'm curious if some of Microsoft studios are going to use that. And Aaron Greenberg liked it. I was like, oh, really? Yeah.
I mean,
some of those Microsoft teams might be looking at IdTech, huh?
I mean, let's be real. It's the most optimized engine on the face of the earth. As far as I'm concerned, like that thing somehow runs Doom Eternal at an easy 1080 60 on the Xbox One.
And it looks amazing too.
Yeah,
exactly. Amazing, yeah.
Exactly. Like it doesn't sacrifice performance for visual detail and texture detail. So, yeah, they're for sure they're going to be leveraging that.
Do you see a world where maybe you start to kind of move away from slip space and you kind of maybe move into, like going down the road,
So I think it's a little too early to call, but I'll definitely say this.
That's what I say, like down the road.
Down the road, I think if there are Halo spin-offs that aren't like a part of Infinite or whatever games as a service platform that's going to be, I definitely think, hey, you've got an engine that works for first-person shooters. Why not? Like,
I would love to see it do a spin-off.
I'm sorry, Benji.
No, you keep going, Eric.
No, I was saying I'm pretty sure there's going to be some phone calls back and forth between 343 and id and everything else,
Yep.
Look, I must say this: like people don't understand. Like id Software does fantastic work as a support studio too. I have my criticisms of the game, but go play Rage 2 and you can completely tell what parts id Software did and what part Avalanche did. And like the combat in that game is flawless.
Yep.
The open world design was a little hit or miss, but the gameplay mechanically was astounding. And I think it'd be incredibly blind if they didn't tap into that. Now, along with this Zenimax acquisition news, it was the first time we got to hear about Creation Engine being overhauled as well, which is something I talked about 2 years ago, and everyone told me I was lying. Bethesda went back to the books and has been reworking Creation Engine. And I think a huge part of the reason that is because, well, frankly, look at how Fallout 76 was received and everything else going on with that engine. And let's face it, Fallout 4, even for the time it released, if you compare it to other RPGs at the time, it was looking a little rough and dated around the edges at the time. So what are you guys kind of expecting when we see Creation Engine again? Like, what are we expecting, something cutting edge? Or like, where are you guys kind of at with Creation Engine?
My hunch is that it is going to be pretty dramatic overhaul, because I think Bethesda kind of knew, even before any acquisitions or anything, that in the space for the big Western RPGs, the competition has been getting elevated, especially by companies like CD Projekt Red and such. Like you said, when Fallout 4 came out, even at the time, like it looked a lot better than old Fallouts, but it didn't really look cutting edge still. I mean, it still kind of looked like just a better version of some of the stuff we saw last gen. I think they knew that they really needed a pretty dramatic overhaul. So I'm expecting, I don't know if it's going to look like, the best engine on the market or anything like that, but I do think it is going to look a lot better in general, especially my guess and this is just a guess, but I think probably the biggest overhaul will be around animations. Because as we all know, Skyrim and such don't exactly have the best animation work. So my guess is that there will be some really big gains like in the animation department and such.
For sure. And I would co-sign it's not even going to be about visual detail as much as it will be about maintaining the scale and physics while squashing the bugs. Well, it's more about optimization. And I think that's frankly a very good thing here is Microsoft, they've said they're going to run them semi-independently, but emphasis on that semi, I think they can kind of whip Bethesda into shape. And like tell them, okay, all right, enough. You have you don't have to release another 76. It's okay. Like let's fix some things up here. I don't know if anyone else listened to the interview that Phil Spencer and Larry Herb did with Pete Hines and Todd Howard, but Todd was talking the absolute madman living up to the memes. He was talking about how with Morrowind, they would actually reboot the console during the load screens to give you more memory. I'm like, damn it, Todd. Come on.
Bethesda games run on duct tape and super glue.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a literal meme, but like I've heard stories from friends that have worked at Bethesda, and some of the things they do to make that engine work it's absolutely astounding. And it's the fact they stick with it that always blew my mind. Like they were always like, no, there's like water coming into Creation Engine. They're like, no, duct tape, baby. We don't need a new boat. We just need to keep putting duct tape on it. But no, I think the RPG potential for all these, with all the acquisitions Xbox has made, it's an important direction for them because the one thing that Xbox was predominantly nailed down for was not having a diverse catalog of games. And with Japanese games like Yakuza Like a Dragon coming day one now instead of, a year, 2 years, 3 years later, and now they've got Western RPGs on lock. They've got a lot of great first-person shooters lined up with what id Software Machine Games is doing. This is obviously to diversify their catalog and portfolio, but it's 23 minutes into the show. We haven't talked about it yet. This is a huge get for Game Pass. Absolutely. Bethesda proper games landing in Game Pass day one. It blows my mind that we are going to be able to play and download Elder Scrolls 6 without dropping money on it at launch.
It's insane.
Yeah. Actually, honestly, not to interrupt anyone, but hot take here. Minecraft is and still is the biggest IP that Microsoft owns, but I think that Elder Scrolls is now the second biggest. I think Halo has been supplanted. Halo is now the third biggest IP. Elder Scrolls launching into Game Pass, I don't think the world is ready for what that looks like. Honestly.
Yeah. I had someone in my live chat just ask me on YouTube, I think it was just maybe yesterday, and they had asked me a question similar to that. They said, which is a bigger deal, Halo Infinite? Is that going to move the needle more, or is potentially Elder Scrolls 6? And I kind of had the same opinion. I was like, if it truly is console exclusive and PC, don't get me wrong, Halo is a big deal, but Skyrim is literally the best-selling single-player RPG of all time. There is no single-player RPG that has ever sold more. So Elder Scrolls 6 dropping day one, oh man, it's insane. I mean, absolutely insane, especially if they keep it off other platforms.
Well, I suppose unless anyone has anything they want to say about contesting the IPs, that's probably the elephant in the room we should dive in on then. Right, Nick? Like, will these games be exclusive or not?
Okay. So, ultra hot take time. It's really funny to me how the conversation has been guided in terms of what can be exclusive. I will always be a proprietor. I have always been a proprietor of the more people that can play things, the more happy I am with it.
Sure.
That's always been my mentality. But I also understand why exclusivity is the way it is. But it's so funny to me that people for the past 5 years have been saying to Xbox, myself included, give me a reason to invest into your ecosystem. And now people are hitting the brakes going, whoa, we didn't mean like this. And I think that's the very clear line is like, there are people that have been saying, hey, Microsoft, you need to do this better. And they've answered those questions in terms of diversity of software and everything else. But now we're in this really weird area where it's like, well, is ZeniMax Media's games so big, can they afford not to put their games on PlayStation 5? And I'm of two minds with this. It's okay, everyone's going to buy an Xbox Series S to play ZeniMax games. Like, there's no way anyone's going to miss out on Doom, Elder Scrolls, and everything else. So if they want to push hardware, this is how they could push hardware. My secondary thought is, do they just want to make as much money as physically possible? Because if they do put them on PlayStation, they're going to still make a bank load of money and everything else. But it also brings up the whole thing of value, right? Like, you're in the PlayStation ecosystem, so you're paying $70 for Elder Scrolls, while your friend who has an Xbox Series S is playing it through Game Pass. I'm really on the fence on which way it could go. I don't really care either way because I'm going to have both. But
Yeah,
I'm just going to put it this way: if people really want Xbox to compete with PlayStation in the way that PlayStation competes, then you won't see ZeniMax games on PlayStation. That's where I am, honestly.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'll let you, I don't think they're going to be on PlayStation. I really don't. Here's what I'll say. I would not be shocked if you saw, I don't know if it's going to be like a Fallout 76, but if they have some sort of like multiplayer type games as a service thing, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked to see something like that go multi-platform. But if we're talking Starfield, if we're talking Elder Scrolls 6, I keep coming back to, you spent $7.5 billion. And some people will look at that and they'll say, oh, you got to recoup your money as fast as possible. If you're going to spend that much money, you have to put it on PlayStation. But I see it a little bit different. I see it as you spent that kind of money to make sure you get people in your ecosystem. If you're selling that game on a PlayStation 5, you are not getting them in your ecosystem. They're staying in the Sony ecosystem. And yes, they are buying your game. And yes, you are going to be making some revenue and some profit back from that, but they're not engaging with your online service. They're not engaging with Game Pass. They're not engaging with your console. They are completely outside of your ecosystem other than just buying the game. So I feel like, I mean, as with most of Microsoft's acquisitions, I think it's all about bringing as many people as possible into that Microsoft, that Xbox ecosystem. If Game Pass was on PlayStation 5, I think it'd be on PS5.
Sure.
But Game Pass is more than likely never going to PlayStation 5. So I can't see those games going over there. I really do think they will only be on Xbox and PC. That is it. And xCloud, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Aaron, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of like somewhere split between what like Nick is saying and what Benji's saying. Like it's you never quite know. I could definitely see a case where the Fallouts and the Oblivions kind of maybe do go there. I don't see anything other than that necessarily going over that way. Anything new created, new IP, because, I mean, let's not kid ourselves, new IP will come out of this. Definitely not. But I was thinking about it like over the last couple of days, and it actually took Rand, who was on Press Start last night, to say something that made me really think even more. And he said, you don't spend $7.5 billion to have your properties on another platform.
Yep.
He said, if this was just about Game Pass, you could say, you know, you could drop a few million, drop $1 billion and say, okay, well, we want, you know, XYZ in Game Pass.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend $7.5 billion to do that. But if you're going to spend that $7.5 billion, then maybe it's more of a play to say, yeah, we're pulling it all in and this is how it's going.
Yep.
But again, like Nick, you just never quite know. They could completely cherry pick and say, we know numbers wise, this, you know, there's such a base for this one particular thing that it will do gangbusters across the board. And maybe it's a time type thing, like it's going to launch in Game Pass, you know, the first year, and then we're going to move it for a little while over to play, or not a little while, move it over to PlayStation or whatever the case may be. Honestly, the cards are in their pocket. They can kind of play it however they want, you know, because the difference I think with a ZeniMax and a Bethesda is now you're not necessarily talking like Obsidian and Exile, where people, you know, when they acquire them, people who've never heard of them hype them. Hype where people out of all that property, they know at least one that's in there. You know, even if you're not a fan, you know Fallout. Even if you're not a fan, you know Oblivion. You know, you probably heard of Wolfenstein from, back in the day. So you know at least one of them, where you may not know some of the other properties of like a Ninja Theory or whatever the case may be. So that's a pretty huge stack to play with.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, no, I definitely, I'll admit I wasn't sure at first. At first I was like, I don't know. They're keeping the publishing staff. And this is a mini rant that we might get into later as we talk about consolidation of the industry. But I was very surprised and impressed with the fact that there are no layoffs. They're keeping the publishing intact. And if I'm being blunt, that's one of the reasons I'm more okay with this than I usually am with publishers being acquired. Is no one's losing their jobs over this. Everything stays exactly the way it was. So I understand why people initially thought that big games would stay multi-plat or whatever. But here's the thing. Your service games will. When this happened, the first thing the Zenimax, online studios account put out was, hey, Elder Scrolls Online isn't getting pulled. And they assured people that. But here's the thing. No one else said that. Yep. No one else put anything out there like that. And today, or earlier today, Phil Spencer had another interview with, I think, Yahoo Finance, and he explained, after some usual PR stuff, of course, because that's how these executives have to go. He said, "Look, we're trying to make the Xbox ecosystem more valuable." Mm-hmm. It is what it is, y'all. Like
what it's all about, that ecosystem.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, the play is Game Pass. Yes, you're absolutely correct. The play is Game Pass. But here's the thing. Game Pass isn't on PlayStation, like Benji said. I think Nintendo Switch is a little different. I think Microsoft and Nintendo are flirting and dancing around each other and trying to, like they're sending each other signals across the bar. They're trying to figure each other out. And more importantly than that, they're not directly competing. They have completely separate audiences, and people who own the Switch are proven by NPD, numbers and whatever, to own another console. So you might see a couple of Switch ports. That definitely could happen. If there's a Fallout Shelter 2, if there's an id Software game that could run, you'll see a Switch game. But PlayStation, no, because they can't get Game Pass out there. And Game Pass is the end game. I have heard people from Microsoft directly say, we would rather you subscribe to Game Pass than we would you buy our game, because that's what they care about. They benefit either way, but that's what they care about. So no, these games aren't going to, with the exception of the service ones, which will continue to get new expansions and updates and enhancements, like Fallout 76 or Elder Scrolls Online or whatever. With those exceptions, no, they're going to pull them. And because they're going to make people buy an Xbox Series S. That's what the S is all about. Is the S isn't for the Xbox owner. The S is for the people who never owned an Xbox before.
Oh, you can go first.
No, go ahead, because mine's piggybacking on the Series S.
Okay. All I was going to say, too, is for the people that are always worried about the money, right? There's so many people that are concerned about, everyone's finances. In regards to that, it's I see a lot of people, they frankly can't afford to not put this on PlayStation. Well, here's the other thing. They're at 15 million Game Pass subs. They increased by 50% on their subs within 5 to 6 months. They're going to be probably at 20 million subs or more by the end of the year. I mean, once we're going into holiday, once we have next gen launch, I will not be shocked at all if they're at 20 million Game Pass subs. I mean, they're going to be pulling in over $1 billion in revenue from just Game Pass within a very short window. We're not far from that at all. So I don't think the really money thing is much of a thing, unless they just want to get maximum upfront cash, day one sales. But in terms of they cannot afford to not put it on PS5, that's just not true. That's just not true.
Yeah. I was gonna say that. I always love the financial conversations. People. As someone who does not do a lot of finance, I cover finances, but not to the extent someone like yourself does or anything else. But people really do not understand how much money people like Apple and Microsoft are actually sitting on. The term FU money does not even begin to describe how much money that these companies are sitting on. As Sam stated earlier in the episode, this was $7.5 billion cash. They just had $7.5 billion sitting around because they didn't get to buy TikTok.
And here's the thing, like, and the thing is like Microsoft investors didn't bat an eye at it.
Yep.
Like there was like, I think for like right after the announcement, there was a really slight dip in stock, but it's like one of those things where all of a sudden the investors are in an uproar. You spent $7 billion. It's like, oh, okay, Microsoft spent $7 billion. All right.
and let's talk about that, man. Let's talk about this. I had a Twitter thread on this where I kind of alluded to it. Shameless self-promo if anyone didn't read it. But there's always been, and I think somewhat rightfully so, this idea that Xbox was the side project at Microsoft.
Yeah, for sure.
That it wasn't as important to Microsoft as like PlayStation is to Sony. PlayStation is very important to Sony if you pay attention to their finances.
Yes.
They have insurance, they have their TVs. PlayStation's where it's at. PlayStation revenue, they're eating it up. But Microsoft, Xbox wasn't as important. And I think one of the reasons no one saw this acquisition coming is because no one, including myself, I put my hand up here, no one thought they were that important. No one thought Xbox was this important to Microsoft. What this signals to me is that Phil has Satya Nadella's ear. He had intention to do whatever it takes to put them in a prime position. And I'm curious what all three of you have to say about that, for sure.
Yeah, I'll just go really quick and then, everyone else. I agree with you in that I think everyone, even people that are just really casually follow, these companies know, like, Microsoft theoretically has this kind of money, just none of us thought they were actually going to go to that level for just the gaming division. So that's what really made it shocking. It wasn't one of those things like, oh, wow, Microsoft has this kind of money. It's like, wow, this is an investment. Like, here's the thing, like, Xbox is not going anywhere for a very long time. You don't drop that kind of money and then, in a couple of years, whatever, if things don't go great, we're pulling out. If you're spending that kind of money, it's in for the long haul for sure.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing is like, if you look back and you go back to like 2017, then we'll call it the like tight-fisted Meyerson era of Xbox, where basically like you couldn't get marketing money, you couldn't get anything. Xbox was literally a cliff note at the end of every financial call. It still is for the most part, but they're like, hey, they're making a lot of money now. That's kind of cool, but Windows. But the thing is like there's so much hand-wringing that goes on. And I'm really surprised because like even like a month ago, we were talking, Warner Brothers. Who's going to buy Warner Brothers? Oh, $2 billion is way too much. Nobody is going to drop that kind of money to pick up a publisher, essentially. Like nobody is going to drop that money. And then Microsoft's like, oh, you know what? No, we're going to drop 3.5 times that. And it kind of sits there. It kind of changes people's thinking on, well, what's on the table now?
Right.
Especially with that interview with Satya afterwards, where he was like, yeah, we want to make more acquisitions like this. And I'm like this in terms of size or more acquisitions in general, because like there are a ton of companies. People don't realize how volatile the gaming market is right now and how many big companies are still kind of going along and going, somebody help. And I kind of have to wonder how many people Sony and Microsoft are looking into getting into, because I think overall it's a cohesive movement right now of just people trying to keep Tencent pushed out.
Yes.
Or Amazon and Google now.
Yeah, Amazon and their play and Google. Well, okay, let's be honest here. I'm not so convinced Google is a threat. After all this time, Google is not really. I'm not saying they couldn't do something crazy. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying they have not shown a cohesive investment strategy to me. Yes. Google Stadia seemed much more like a side project. I'm sure the way the industry is going, I will be proven wrong tomorrow when I wake up. But
no, I'm with you.
For now, I think even though I have my questions about it, I think Amazon's Luna project looks a lot more cohesive, like a lot more of a threat. It seems more well thought out. We can talk a little bit more about that later. But what you're going into, Nick, I suppose is a good segue into our next topic. Is the industry being consolidated, and is that a bad thing if it's the case?
Well, actually, before we do that, I did want to weigh in on the Microsoft, the whole like process. And I think when you say, like Phil has Satya's ear, I think honestly, this is just me kind of spitballing. You know, I don't know if I like to know how you guys feel about it, but I definitely do feel that there was a time, not that they were ever going to shutter, because I know those are the rumors, whatever. But I think there was probably a time under Myers, and we all know how that kind of whole thing went. It was dark times, right? But I think, at least the way I kind of see it, the way they've kind of evolved into where they're going with Game Pass, you know, when they started the Play Anywhere initiative and things like that, I definitely think that was, in a way, you know, Satya and Phil kind of bantering back and forth. And maybe when Phil took the helm, and that rumored meeting between the two kind of happened. I can honestly think Satya, admitting that he's not a gamer, probably sat across from Phil and said, okay, this box that we have is cute, but how does this fit the Microsoft vision of being a service-based company? Mm-hmm. How do we take this from Play Anywhere, take it off this one box? I know we're playing with the PC world. How do we take this and move this into what we do? Because you go back to the Phil interview with Seamus and Peter Moore that he did with Ryan, they talked about at times when, you know, Xbox was kind of seen as like the punk teenager over in their own little building, doing their own little thing. They had their box, and the Microsoft proper did kind of look at them as something of, I won't say a joke, but sort of didn't take them seriously. Like they were doing their own little thing. But I think what's starting to happen when you go from Play Anywhere into Game Pass or whatever, it's Phil and Satya talking about ways that this is a future thing. And I kind of look back on, you know, the term of like what Wayne Gretzky would tell his father would tell him playing hockey. He's like, don't go where the puck is and the jumble is, go where the puck's going to be. Yep. Right. So how do we turn this into what we do? And I think that's what you're kind of seeing. And it's the long play. So I know people like to, you know, hype up and say, well, you know, the 15 million subs and this and that. That's not really where they're looking to be. They're looking definitely where this is going to go. And like you said, Sam, it's going to be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out. You know, so I do think there was a time where it was sort of like a discussion, like
absolutely.
You know, the Xbox as what it is not it. It's not just the console. What are we going to make it? But the other net I want to cast out before we move, I know we're kind of looking at it in terms of what does it mean for Xbox and Sony, but it's been on record that they've said they don't see Sony as competition. So this move of where these games are going to go and who, you know, across platform, I know it's easy to look at Sony, but yeah, you're right. Amazon is now in the fray. You know, they're announced the other day, and you know, Google looks a little shaky with Stadia, but it's still Google.
Yep.
Yeah. And then there's Apple. So if that's who they're looking at as competition, what does it mean for that? And it does definitely seem like they want to be services. So do they talk to these guys? Do they ignore these guys? Or you know, what does that mean? What do you guys think?
No, I go ahead, Benji. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to make a really quick, basically, agreement. It's like, even though right now a company like Google or Amazon might not feel like the biggest threat in the gaming industry, here's the thing, like, they're the size companies that if they wanted to come out and just buy Bethesda one day, like, they can do it. Like, you know what I mean? It's not quite the same thing as a Sony, whereas Sony is sitting on a lot of cash on hand, but they do not have anywhere near the cash on hand we're talking about that these companies do. So if you're in Microsoft's boots and you know Amazon and you know Google are at least exploring it, right? They're at least trying to come into this space. Those are companies that legitimately have the potential one day, if they want to just buy any publisher they want, basically. They have that kind. Now, they would have to, of course, get it approved, a whole bunch of things, but they have that kind of money to throw around. And I think we're going to go a whole bunch into the consolidation of the market. But in one way, buying a publisher like Bethesda is helping keep your opposition, if you are afraid of those companies coming in, out the door.
Yep. No, absolutely. It's I actually have, full disclosure, I can pull up a conversation I had with a friend well over a year ago. This was like early 2019, late 2018, and we were talking back and forth, and we were like, "Hey, is Microsoft ever going to buy a publisher?" And we both agreed, like at the time, this was a long time ago, that Zenimax, you know, Bethesda would probably be the most likely one. But we both agreed it's like that's not going to happen unless they consider Tencent or Amazon a threat. And now I'm thinking a little more about that. Amazon has suddenly made their play. We know Tencent is gobbling up everything they can. Like, yeah, that's the end game.
Yes.
That's the fed off. It's like for Microsoft, it's every single one we snatch up is one that we know Tencent or Amazon won't grab.
Exactly.
Yeah, and actually to piggyback on top of that, is like, why do you think PlayStation picked up Insomniac Games? Yep. You do not think that Facebook was looking at Insomniac's VR games and went, we could make a play here. Because we already lost Ready at Dawn, so the Order 1887's out the door. Like, we already lost that. But at least they locked up Insomniac Games. And to piggyback on Eric's point about, what can Xbox do to fit into, the Microsoft ecosystem? When you look at Xbox Game Pass with like EA Play Now, Project X Cloud, all this stuff that's all bundled into it, it's kind of like Microsoft Office, but for like in a video game sense. You pay one sub and you get all these different things that you use or you may not use. Like, for example, for my work, I use Word and I use Excel a lot. I don't use like PowerPoint or anything else, but there are options I can use. And I think they're very much marketing Xbox Game Pass Ultimate as this. It's like, oh, so you want to use Game Pass? Here you go. Lives included so you can play online. Oh, you like to play on the go? Here's xCloud. Oh, you like EA games? It's providing those different draws that are going to make people pay attention to different parts of the service that some people may use, some people may not. It's just creating a diverse package, so to speak, to draw people in. Yeah. And I think that fits so well into the quote unquote Microsoft bubble that they have dominated a lot of spaces with in the past.
That's a great analogy. Yes, that is very true. I had never thought about it like that, but yes, that is spot on.
Yeah, you know what it made me think about too? Adobe.
Yeah, that's another one. I don't know. I wear a pirate hat when it comes to Adobe, but anyway.
hey. Man, talk about like as a designer, some begrudging like credit cards. It was like, you sons of bitches. They're slick with it, man. They're like, you can get Photoshop and Lightroom, but if you want Illustrator, it goes up $15.
Yeah, exactly. But no, to kind of move us along, and we're going to talk about consolidation of the industry, because I can understand people's anxiety about this. I get it. Because I don't want to live in a world where Microsoft, Sony, and, for example, Tencent own everything. Because at the end of the day, THQ Nordic's going to own us all.
Gonna try to at least, right?
Yeah, they're gonna try to. Like they're gonna buy up the IP I made in high school for an ISU project for licensing purposes. I don't know. But
McDonald's. It's like, what?
But I understand people's anxiety about it because, like, if every platform holder like buys up a publisher, it's the same thing as like when we saw Microsoft made this move. I saw all these think pieces go out on these sites. And everyone's like, "Oh, Sony needs to buy Square Enix as the big brain player. They need to buy Take-Two or." And I'm like, no. We don't need to get into a tit for tat buying spree. Xbox inherently needed this.
I think it's going to happen, though.
Oh, yeah. I definitely...
Yeah, I think it's coming.
But I will say this, is I think PlayStation's money is better invested in maintaining partnerships with things like Square Enix, because let's face it, PlayStation has such a deep-seated relationship with Square Enix, it seems redundant to spend a massive amount of money they'd have to spend to buy them. Because, like, let's face it, they've got the Marvel's Avengers deal, they've got all the JRPGs, they're in a lock there. I need Sony to buy Housemarque because I love them and I want them to be secure.
Yeah, not to take over the conversation, but no, if I'm Jim Ryan, I'm getting Housemarque and Bluepoint on the phone ASAP. Like right now. Hey, what do you want?
To be there forever, man.
And to be honest, Kojima as well. I would get all three.
Yep.
I would buy all three.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we know Sony's sitting on the money to do that, and I think it would be like with all things going on right now, where everyone's kind of, like you've got companies like NetEase that's investing into companies, you've got Tencent fishing around and picking up developers. You really need to secure the people that are close to you. Like you've got to keep your friends close and your enemies as far away from you as you possibly can. And I definitely think Sony should swoop in and buy Bluepoint, buy, all these other small studios that they work with, because they're so essential to the PlayStation ecosystem And if someone was to swoop in and take them, I'm not saying the games would magically disappear or whatever, but there might be some changes and everything else. Like, Bluepoint's done such a fantastic work with remaking PlayStation games. If they lost that to another developer and they're like, all right, go make a MOBA, like, it would be a waste of resources. But the problem is like Amazon, Facebook, and all those, they have no problem of taking a developer and going, no, you do this now.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we could lose creativity in the industry if certain people don't get picked up. And what I like about Microsoft and Sony purchasing studios, developers, or whatever the case may be, is they seem to have finally understood. Well, PlayStation has always relatively understood it, but Xbox seems to have finally gotten it, that if you give these people the money they need to be creative, they will create great things for you if you keep your fingers out of it. And that's something I don't trust Tencent to do, and that's something I don't trust Facebook, Amazon, or Google to do, but it's something I trust Xbox and Sony to do. So as we go forward, as more things get gobbled up and everything else, I think it'll change the landscape. Like, this changed the landscape in itself, but I don't think it's the end of the world that a lot of people think it is.
No, but yeah, not to put too much light on it, but I did see some notions of people kind of wanting like all of them to be gobbled up under one. I'm like, you don't want that.
No,
you don't want that kind of world, because so don't even start thinking in terms of that. You still want things to be healthy, and no, I don't think any one particular would be looking to do it, unless, again, we talk about Tencent. But yeah, that's just my little addition to that,
Okay. I agree with you, Eric. So let's not dance around the subject. Is the industry about to be consolidated? Because of this? And I want to. Okay, Benji, I want you to take the lead on this. Like, let's dive in. Let's go.
Yes, the industry is headed 100% for consolidation. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see most companies under probably 5 or so companies' umbrellas. I just think that is where we're headed over the next 5 to 10 years, because it's what's happening in essentially all tech and media. It's essentially all going that way, whether it's movies, whether it's music, whether it's, phones, whatever. We're headed, the entire world essentially is headed to not like a monopoly, but yes, just a handful of giants owning everything and competing with one another. And gaming's essentially going to move the same way. And I think the main reason is there's just so much money in games. There is so much money in the gaming industry. That's why you're seeing Amazon come in. That's why you're seeing Google come in. They already are maximizing other areas. And the point of a company to investors is growth. You constantly want growth. You constantly want more and more and more and more. So as these companies look around, what's the next thing we can grow into? And gaming is awfully lucrative and awfully attractive. So I do think in the next 10 years, you're going to see, 5 to 10 years, mass consolidation. It doesn't mean everyone. There's still going to be your indies out there. There's still going to be your, some AAs and stuff. But yeah, I think you're going to see, Microsoft's at 23. I think they're going to go to 30. That's kind of my expectation.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 30 studios. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Not like tomorrow, but I could see them. Yeah, I could see them getting up to 30 in the next, 5 years or so. And Sony, yeah, they need to acquire somebody. I hate to say it. I don't think they need to go for a Square Enix, but like we said, a Housemarque, a Bluepoint, a Kojima. I do think they need to do some of these, because even if you have a really great relationship, it's not just about like what you're going to do. It's about what other people are going to do. And unfortunately, once this arms race starts, it rarely just stops. Like it's a very rare thing where all of a sudden someone makes a big move in a certain industry, and then everything's just okay. That one thing happened, and now nothing else does. This is going to set off a chain of events, and we just saw, Sony was bidding up to $1 billion on the what's their name?
Layu.
Yes, Layu. Yes. So they're already out there shopping. So it's not one of those things like, will Sony do an acquisition? We know they're trying to. Right. So yeah, there's definitely more consolidation coming. I wouldn't panic about it, because I don't think it's all going to be under one. Like I said, Nintendo's going to be here. Sony's going to be here. I don't think anyone's buying EA or Activision. I think they're just too big. There still will be a decent amount of hats in the pool, but you are going to see a lot of companies get bought up. Yeah. I mean, we already have. It's one of those things where it's like, it's all happening so fast. It's hard to really think about it, but how many studios in the last 5 years have been bought? It's insane when you consider Insomniac, all of Microsoft's moves, the things Tencent has bought. I mean, we're already in the middle of consolidation right now. Like right now it's happening. So, yep.
Interesting. That's very interesting. But I also, what you said about not panicking, I think it's interesting. We just saw another publisher announced, Dreamhaven Games, the Blizzard devs, and they've got 2 new studios. Ex-Respawn devs are working on a new studio. Ex-BioWare devs are working on that new Wizards of the Coast RPG studio. They've even got Drew Karpyshyn back, of all people. They got him unretired. And that's not to undo what you're saying at all. Not at all. I think you're right. I think you're in the right direction. I'm just saying I think it goes in cycles. I think a lot of the big stuff is getting bought up, but you're going to see a lot of grassroots started that will eventually
for sure.
Further, and then the industry will cycle over. So I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I guess what my point is don't panic, people.
Yes, I would not panic.
All the big players are big enough that no one is going anywhere.
Yes.
And I think that's very exciting. I think it's because I did catch part of your last live stream, Benji, and I remember you talked about how the 360 and the PS3 were essentially HD flips of each other. And I never even thought about that before, but I thought about it. It's like, yeah, you're right. Outside of Halo or God of War or whatever, that's the case. And I think even to an extent, the Xbox One, the PS4 were, I think they were a little better. They were a little better about going in different directions, but you still had a lot of, which box do I want to play my games on? But it's because it's the same thing 90% of the time. But now it looks like they are both going in different directions that cater to very, very different audiences. PlayStation is going, hey, our audience likes the big Hollywood AAA HBO game, the God of Wars, the Last of Us, and the JRPGs, the Square Enix games, and all that sort of stuff. That's what we're locking up. And it seems like Microsoft has finally realized, let's go back to our roots. We were founded on classic first-person shooters and Western RPGs. Let's lock them up. Let's go after them. And I don't know. I guess I feel like people should be excited right now. People should be very excited that you have choice that isn't just, there's 1 or 2 games that the other one doesn't have. That's just me. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah, you're spot on. I agree for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's always the thing that's kind of like, that's part of the reason why I enjoyed the PC space for so long, especially during this generation, is there's such a variety of games on PC. Yeah, there is a lot of early access, kind of like throwaway games and everything else. Like, there's a lot of stuff you got to filter through. But there's some really unique titles that separates PC from console. And of course, you got the options and everything else that come along with it. And like, everyone always sat there, especially through 2017 and 2018, going, well, I just wish Microsoft would do what Sony did. And I always kind of sat there and went, I want Microsoft to do better, but I don't want them to copy.
Yes.
Like, I did not want them to be like, here's our version of God of War. Here's our version of The Last of Us. I want them to make games that made me excited to play on Xbox or play in their ecosystem. They didn't have to copy what Sony was doing. They just had to make games that were interesting to me. And things like, the fact that I can play something like Wasteland 3 or Tell Me Why or, Halo Infinite going forward and like things like that. Having that diversity of lineup, it's something me and Eric talk about a lot, is like the original Xbox was so amazing because it had all this stuff on it. They tried to bring all these different types of games together and were like, look, we want you to play anything you want here. We can give you anything on this box. And I think Microsoft is going towards that with this. And I think Sony's doing a great job at diversifying their content as well going forward. And I don't know, it seems like heading into this generation, I am much more excited for the games that are coming out than I was heading into the previous generation, heading into this one. Because I remember kind of at launch in like 2013 being like, yeah, okay.
I agree. I see people talk about how like, the announced lineup for next gen is like, I'm not exciting. And I just think back to last gen, like the current gen to me, I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not even there's so much more variety. It's not even close. Even if you aren't hyped for launch day, okay? Even if you're not excited for launch day, which I think launch day is looking pretty good, to be honest, in general. But even if you don't want to say that, I mean, in the first year, there are so many cool games announced. Yeah.
Yeah, like what did we get in the first year of the Xbox One, the PS4? We got like
not a ton.
I personally remember being impressed with like Titanfall and Shadow of Mordor, maybe Dragon Age Inquisition. That's it.
I
like
think
those three.
Inquisition was that year. Yeah, there was not much. There was not much.
No, whereas and things could get delayed. Things could get delayed, of course. But like we're looking at Miles Morales, Demon Souls. Xbox players will be able to play Gears Tactics if they have, the PC players have it. Gears Tactics is coming to console. Horizon Forbidden West, ostensibly a new God of War. Like Halo Infinite actually hits next year. Ratchet and Clank, exactly. Like, y'all, come on, come on. Like, I mean, okay, Bethesda. Let's talk about it. Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. Those are next year. And
you got for a superhero game. I mean, you got Gotham Knights. You got a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, Gotham Knights. Oh, that Harry Potter game, Hogwarts Legacy. Like,
there's tons, and we still don't have everything announced yet. So it's like, I mean, if you don't see anything in the first year that excites you, I don't know. Do you have a pulse?
I don't like saying this, but if you can't find something you like, is this actually your hobby? Let's consider it. Let's consider it.
Yeah.
No, I actually professionally being mad on the internet. That's my hobby. But no, it's such an exciting time, and like we've seen, like both Xbox and PlayStation have fumbled the ball a bit. This isn't 2013 where PlayStation came out swinging and hit home runs the whole time, while Xbox had their shoes tied together and just kept falling flat on their face. This has been a good alternation between PlayStation doing something stupid and then Xbox doing something stupid, and then both of them doing something great. And we're all sitting there like, what's happening right now? Like, like for a perfect example of this, it's like PlayStation's delivery of showing off games has been 10 times better than Xbox's has.
Sure.
Period. End of story.
Yes.
Amazing delivery. Their
better,
PR marketing speak about their games, though. Holy moly! Figure it out before you put it out there.
Last week fell off a cliff.
I have never seen a turnaround, I don't think, between a conference and then the PR afterwards quite like I did last week. It was something else. We talked about it last week. Anyone can go check our past episode, but like it was something else.
That's where I was. When I was live reacting to it, I was like, wow, this was an amazing showcase. And then my chat started like dropping all of the news afterwards. And I'm reading it. I'm like, what?
See, it was the most. It was. I never got to see the show live. I was at work, so I was reading my Twitter feed. Everyone's like, "Oh, God of War! Oh, this!" And I'm like, "Oh, dope!" So I go back to work, and like 30 minutes later, I check my phone, and everyone's just distraught. And I'm like, "What happened?" And that's kind of the thing. Is like PlayStation, like Xbox's messaging has gotten way better than it was, but still needs work.
Sure.
But PlayStation, I don't know what has happened in terms of their messaging lately, but like whoever sat down and wrote out the Spider-Man remaster lingo, like that 3-paragraph thing, respect, because I don't get it. I'm just going to buy it on my PlayStation 4 and hope it upgrades. That's all I'm going to do, because like the PR speak has been terrible. And like, don't get me wrong, PlayStation's going to sell a lot of consoles. They're going to sell a lot of games.
Yes.
I see people doom and glooming like, oh, they screwed up marketing speak, so no one's going to buy a PlayStation 5.
Yeah, no. Luckily for them, it's like, yes, the PR recently has been rough, but the games look amazing. Exactly. And at the end of the day, the games speak the most. So it's like we can definitely knock them for some of the PR. There's no doubt about it. But whenever you look at that lineup, I mean, they are fire. I feel like Microsoft is going to be in a great spot with games, I feel like, in like a year or two. But right now, I mean, Sony is just in such a good spot. I mean, they have so much coming in. If God of War and Horizon really both make it in 2021, that is insane. That is insane.
Okay, so God of War, this wasn't in the script, Nick, but I have to pick Benji's brain here. Okay, God of War in 2021, Benji, seems really bold. Seems like really, are you sure about that? Until I thought, and I want to ask you this, what if this is a Miles Morales situation where it's a smaller game? It's just like, no, this isn't the full next title. This is like a 6 to 8 hour God of War game to kickstart Ragnarok, and then we're going to do the next big game after that. Because if that's the case, I can see it hitting in 2021 at that point.
It's interesting to me. I have heard that, and I wouldn't be shocked if that ends up being true. I think this is the full-on sequel.
Okay.
I mean, I do think so. They've had 3 years, and I know in an interview, Cory Barlog said that at the time, we'll see how things unravel, but he had said at the time when they were interviewing him that whatever the next God of War was, they could make it a lot faster than they made this past one. He said they set up a lot of things. They had their workflows. They knew what they were doing, and they felt like that they would be able to get the God of War sequel out much, much quicker than they developed the last God of War. So they've had, if it comes out at the end of 2021, they will have had like 3.5 years. So here's my stance on it. It seems theoretically doable, but I agree with you. It seems bold. It seems bold. If they really make 2021, shout out to Santa Monica, because to get a God of War game out in 3 years with the COVID pandemic, they will be heroes. If they really manage that, then I will be blown away, because when I saw that 2020, I mean, I thought for sure whenever they were showing this symbol, obviously we knew it's God of War, and I was like, oh, it's going to be 2022. And then I see that 2021, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, now you have that. Yeah, because I'm saying if you have that lined up for like fall holiday, and you really play it up, and I said, yeah, but you can't deny like messaging wise, they have to get back on or get on point, with that. And again, I don't know. And the year of 2020 is just like everybody is just like all over the place with certain things. You know what I'm saying? It's just crazy. But it doesn't mean that they can't get back on point.
Sure.
Yeah, they absolutely can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here in Fort Lauderdale at my house. I'm not obviously working for Sony, but I'd start playing it up like, even if these games, again, I know people will throw out the whole cross, generation thing or whatever. If you're gonna move past that and lean in that, say, hey, yeah, this is gonna be available here, but holy crap, look what it's gonna look like over here. And if you want that good juice, move over here. And quite frankly, I think Microsoft should be playing into that too. Like, when it comes to like the Series X, it's like, hey, we have a little brother out there who's gonna, do these things, these special things. And we have these cross-gen games, and they look great here, but oh man, you really want to be over here on this X. Lean into that. That's the kind of thing that energizes people and get people moving. And like Benji said, games sell themselves. If you put something, gamers have a short memory. It doesn't matter what you did a couple months ago. You put something beautiful in front of them and it looks fun, they're like, oh yeah, what you did a couple months ago was stupid, but damn, I got to get with this. That's how gamers roll. And then, I said, and I think ultimately, like you said, in the next few years, I think Microsoft is setting themselves up for that. And if they start delivering on that, hopefully I'm praying that the talks of 2013 will eventually die, because I'm tired of both Xbox guys and PlayStation guys still bringing up the same thing. I'm like, it's 2020. So much shit has happened in 2020. We're still talking about what happened in 2013.
Yeah.
We're moving forward, people.
Yeah. If I had one piece of advice for PlayStation, is honestly find someone who has a little bit more charm than Jim Ryan to front things, because I
Jim
don't.
Ryan is no Sean Layden. Let's just be honest.
Bingo. Because you know what? When I got back into the PlayStation ecosystem with the PlayStation 4, because I was day one on a PS3 and then it yellowed on me like a year after, I was gone from that so fast. When I came back on board with PlayStation 4, it was great, because it was like Sean Layden's like, yeah, these are our studios. These are the games we're making. We really love our creators. And there's all these stories about like Sean going in and interacting with like Cory Barlog. We need more time. Okay, you've got that time. There's something really admirable, or just Sean Layden was just a very all-around likable guy. Like, yes, he was corporate suit and business, but you also kind of liked him. It's kind of the same vibe that Phil Spencer gives off, where you're like, yes, you're corporate, but also you enjoy this as a hobby as well. Right. Jim Ryan's like that uncle that is constantly pitching you ideas over dinner, and you're just like, dude, no, just no. Like, every time Jim Ryan says something, 6 months later, he has to walk it back.
Do you remember when Jim Ryan said just like 2 months ago that he wants the room to feel like you could cut the testosterone with a knife?
I forgot about that, but yeah.
Some of the stuff Jim says. I feel like Jim's a brilliant businessman. Everything I hear about him in terms of business, he is S tier, fantastic business guy. But yeah, he's not the best interview.
Yeah, no, and I think they need him from a strategy perspective. Like what he did for PlayStation 4 in Europe is astounding.
Yes.
But Jim Ryan,
have that charm.
There is, like when I watch interviews with him, I'm like, you don't give me the happy-go-lucky vibes that I'm used to from you guys. Like even Jack Tretton, who is a little bit more like business cut, still had a certain charisma to him. Jim Ryan's just like, yeah, we're taking your money. That's fine. Like I respect that. I respect the hell out of the fact he is business first and everything else doesn't matter. But the problem is whenever Phil Spencer and Jim Ryan say something, I have to look at headlines for a week and a half based off of one sentence.
Yes.
So
I know I'm writing those headlines.
Yeah, I know.
I think, Nick, if I can say what it kind of is if you look at the parallels, you need in the boardroom, you need a shrewd business person that understands the numbers and understands what's going to move the needle. Because you're going to have shareholders on your ass. That's definite, right? But they're not always the people that you want out front talking to a gaming audience.
Yeah.
Because that's two different languages. Do you want them to talk to the shareholders? Because the shareholders are like, yo, man, this dude knows what's up, because I'm thinking Sunday Bugatti, But when it comes to gamers, there's a very fine line of even when things aren't going the way it should go, they have a way of explaining it and talking about it.
Yeah.
Or they have a way of setting your expectation or letting you down easy or hyping you up or doing whatever, right? Even if things don't come to fruition, it's a different type of language, a different type of warmth, and usually it comes from somebody who they put their hands on a controller, even if they're super hardcore or they're whatever the case may be. And I think even like Tretton was a guy who he played games.
Yeah.
He may not have been like a Phil, he may not be, like a Sean Layden, but some of these guys came up through programming. They came up through studios. They know the culture. You have to know the culture. It's like, I wouldn't want somebody, you talk about like hip hop culture, but I wouldn't want somebody who is like, the CEO of like a record label who doesn't really know the music. They know the business side, but they have to have someone who knows how to talk the music side of it and talk to the audience. That's what you need. And again, Jim may be the coolest guy to sit down and have a beer with, but he just may not have the warmth and the understanding of how to talk across the lines to people or to gamers, I should say, in general,
Yeah,
so,
let me just pitch it out there. Like, if you're sitting on Yoshida right now and you're not using that man to talk to the people, it's a missed opportunity. That dude, I love that dude.
Yes.
That dude is fantastic.
Shoot is the best.
Or I'll raise you Herman Holst. Herman Holst.
I agree.
That man understands studios. When I saw that he was the new one being, with Shu stepping down a little, taking the role with Indies, I'm like, yeah, Herman Holst immediately makes sense.
And Herman is like, if you watch any interviews with him, he is like a business guy and stuff too. But he has that charisma. He has that.
Right. Yeah. Like he understands business. Don't get me wrong, but he also operates Guerrilla and he understands games.
Yeah,
that's what people relate to.
And I think with Herman Holtz too, is I think something he brings to the table that's really important is culture. And what I mean by culture is you look at how much Guerrilla Games can output, how well that studio is run, how we have never heard issues from Guerrilla Games. You never hear about crunch, never hear about employee abuse or anything like that. Those studios are run like machines. And to take Herman Hulst and go, all right, put you in control here and go take a look at what Naughty Dog's doing. What can we do to change this? What can we do here to make this better? What can we do to change the culture of certain studios, improve things, improve our products, improve our employee experiences? That is the guy I'd want doing that. I think PlayStation's there was a lot of in 2019 when they were shuffling people around and Layden mysteriously left and there was all this, he got pushed out and like, we've heard a ton of different things about him and Ryan not really liking each other, which I could see, and everything else. But I really respect a lot of the decisions they've made in terms of like Shuhei with the indies. He is so in touch with that side of the gaming sphere. Having him interacting with those guys makes sense. Herman running PlayStation Studios. That's a brilliant, bring someone up who understands they're in the ecosystem. Jim Ryan, he may not be the best PR speak, but he understands what drove PlayStation to success in Europe, and he's going to take that and globalize that across. I think all they really need to do to clear up their mixed messaging is get Sony North America talking proper with everybody else, because it seems to be just a general miscommunication between all the different divisions. We saw it when Miles Morales was revealed, and someone, I think it was like, wasn't it a place Sony president or wherever, was like, oh, it's a DLC, and I'm like, no, it's not. And that's the kind of things they've got to avoid. Otherwise, I think they're in an amazing space to succeed next generation and keep rolling.
Oh yeah, PS5 is going to be gigantic. It's going to do incredible.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I think there were definitely some lessons probably taken away in dealing with the pandemic and not having shows and how to and delivering these things. And I definitely think a lot of us are saying, yeah, we need something of a show, because I wonder if some of this messaging would have been the way it is if we had a consolidated type of thing happen, as opposed to it. Here we are in mid-September, and we're still getting trickle or information on games and consoles and everything else, and it's almost like it's like fatigue in a lot of ways. So right now, their patience is thin. You can't really drag out the message. You have to be very precise at this point. Because
especially this close to launch.
Yeah, everyone's punch drunk and on and giving somebody $500, $300, whatever dollars you're going to give, plus on hardware and everything else. Yeah, people are on edge, so you really have to be on point with what you're saying to them.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's more noise than it will actually affect them in the end. I see some people, I've had people ask me on my Twitter and stuff. They're like, "Oh, is Sony in trouble now, after this last week and stuff?" I'm like, no. They're going to still sell amazing. Their games are going to still sell 10 plus million units. Like, they're completely fine. It's just, it would be nice for a little clarity in their statements. We have just seen a little bit off there, but it's like, other than that, I mean, they're in an amazing spot.
Yeah. And one thing you saw from them, I was shocked to see it. I was like, I'm not used to seeing that from them, is when they came and apologized for the pre-order.
I've never seen a statement like that from their Twitter.
I was like, whoa. Okay. So again, your hope is that they saw what happened. They didn't like what happened. Hopefully they figure that out and get that straightened out, because it is a new regime. It is a whole new regime, and maybe they got to figure that out.
Yeah, and this thing is we talk about this so much, but we that are in the social media space and in the analyzing the industry and writing about the industry, we're such a much more intensely detailed orientated bubble.
Oh yeah.
I was talking to my friend who, me and him play games all the time. I've played with games with him since we were 7 years old, and I asked him, I'm like, "Oh, so did you hear about the PlayStation screw up with Miles Morales?" He's like, "Bro, I don't care. I got a pre-order for PS5 and Spider-Man. Who cares?" Yep. And I'm like, and there you go.
That's 90% of gamers. It's 10% of us that are fully aware of all of this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I say the flip side of that, Nick? Because I was kind of laughing the other day when the Xbox pre-orders were going on, and I saw people reporting in and saying they were surprised that so many people were lined up. I'm like, guys, we got to really get to this position to think that our little dumb side of Twitter doesn't hit the gaming community as a whole. Most people, even if they looked in, they're like, "I don't really give a shit what you guys are talking about. This is what I play on." My cousin, he missed the pre-orders because he was at work. I was able to pre-order a PS5 Slim for him. He's been playing on PlayStation since the PS1. He doesn't have anything against Xbox, but that's just what he's used to. That's what he likes. So to him, if I said to him, "Man, that was a mess what happened with PlayStation," like Nick said, he'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? He wouldn't even care. He wouldn't even think. And even if he did hear it, he would go, "I don't know what that means. Can I play 2K? Can I get that Spider-Man? Can I do this? We're good." So yeah, it's I think we put too much weight on these little back and forths that we have in this little bubble.
Oh yeah. I've worked retail in gaming, specific retail, for a decade, and I mean 9 out of 10 people that come through the door have no idea about any of this. No clue. I'm not kidding you, a huge amount of people that play Call of Duty every year that could not tell you who develops Call of Duty. They have no idea. No idea. They just see a new Call of Duty and they grab it. That's a huge chunk of people.
I will one up you with a story. That I was at my EB Games, which for American listeners is GameStop in Canada. And I was sitting there, I was talking to one employee, and this woman comes in with her son and says she wants the new Call of Duty game. And he's like, oh, it's not out for a month. And she goes, oh, are you guys still working on it in the back? And I'm like, pardon? And she's like, yeah, like you got like one guy building the game in the back, right? He builds all the games in here, right? And I'm just like,
yes.
And I'm like, those people do exist. Like one of the things,
there are lots of them.
Like one of the things that made me laugh immensely was when everyone remembers when the Switch Lights came out. My EB Games had so many people come back mad with the Switch Lights because they're like, why doesn't the Pro controller work? And they're like, it's a handheld. And they're like, yeah, but I want to use the Pro controller. And that's the thing, is like for a lot of people, they don't follow it on social media. They don't everything else. My mom just got back into gaming. Like she hasn't played on a console since the GameCube, and she went out and bought an Xbox randomly. And I had to try to explain Game Pass to her. And she's like, so it's like Blockbuster. I'm like, no, it's like Netflix. Well, I don't use Netflix.
I like that she asked that question as an old head here, man.
Hey, I remember Blockbuster. I mean, this is inside baseball or whatever, but on Windows Central, one of the sites I write for, in June 2019, E3, you know what the top viewed article was?
Oh, I know this answer.
You know it is. Nick, you've heard the story. It was, can the Xbox One S All Digital Edition play disc?
Right.
These people exist. People. Like,
it's like we talked about last week, Sam. It was like both Sony and Microsoft are going to have that's going to be the confusing question. Not necessarily which model or whatever. They're just going to go, because Benji, you'll probably agree to this. People see that price. It's the same with the Switch Lite. Like Nick said, they saw the price. And they grabbed it. They didn't really know what it did or didn't do. It's the same thing with the Series S. They're like, I see that price, and then they're gonna go home and go like, where do I put the disc in? That's just a thing, and I don't know why people get so upset with consumer confusion. It's like no one's taking a dig, except for the little bubble, but that is a real thing. You know, Nintendo will raise their hand and say, we couldn't wait to run from the Wii U because we messed that one up so bad.
That was the worst I've ever seen. I worked at GameStop, and I don't work there anymore. I worked at GameStop, and I had people come in years after the Wii U was out, and they were still asking me for the Wii tablet accessory for their Wii at home. And I was like, this was like 3 years after the Wii U was out, and I was like, no, it is a different console. So I can't just hook it up to my Wii.
The messaging was so bad on the Wii U.
It's the worst I've ever seen.
Like I ran a gaming YouTube channel when the Wii U came out, and I remember buying it, and I did like a 10-minute rant video because you couldn't take the tablet more than like 10 feet away from it to keep playing. I was like, I thought this was portable. They never said this wouldn't work like this. And I'm like, they did somewhere, but I just didn't read it.
The biggest red flag was when the very first time they showed their next console, they did not show the console. They only showed the tablet. And so many people saw that. And if you're not well informed and you're going to find follow-up articles, you just see that first thing. In your head, you're like, oh, this is just some cool tablet. And they didn't shake that for a very long time. Yeah,
it's the same thing as Split End mentioned in the chat. It's the same thing with a lot of people.
Oh, what up, Split End?
It's a ton of people still think is the Xbox One still online only? I heard that up until 2019. That's still very much a thing. Like my friend told me, he was like, oh, what's your PSN? I'm like, oh, my PSN, my gamer tag's this. He's like, you play Xbox? He's like, you can't play it offline. Why would you play it? And I'm like, bro, it's 2019. But that's how long bad messaging can stick around for.
And nothing Sony's had, I don't think, has been to bring it back to Sony, I don't think they've had anything that has exited the bubble in like a bad way. Like to get out of the bubble, like to where it's a mass bad thing, like it's got to be really bad.
Sure.
Like that Xbox always online type thing when it first came out. Like small little PR blunders like this, it makes people on Twitter and stuff angry, but your average person that's walking into GameStop right now to pre-order PS5 has no idea what Jim Ryan said about Spider-Man. They have no idea.
And Sony survived the PSN hack.
Yes.
Sure.
I mean, that was and conversely, I mean, Microsoft survived the Red Ring. That was a thing, but it's all in how you respond and what you do to try to make good on it. And again, games.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you do those things, but you don't have any. And that's, I think, ultimately kind of what probably did the Wii U, and not just like the messaging. I know it had great games, but people really didn't care anymore because there was no third-party support. There was just, and again, the confusion of it. And then on top of that, too, they never dropped the price.
The Wii U was a very extreme example of where even games couldn't save it. Like that was
it
was too
very
late.
extreme, very extreme.
It was too late.
I remember the breaking point for me with my Wii U's. I held on to it. I was like, I need to do something. Then they released that Luigi's Mansion sequel. I'm like, that's got to come to the Wii U, right? There's no way they're skipping the Wii U with the Luigi's Mansion game. Going to my EB Games, I'm like, yeah, can I get this for my Wii U? They're like, the employee laughed at me, and they're like, that's not on the Wii U. I'm like, why? So I traded in and got a PS3 instead. I traded in got PS3 like 6 months before Xbox One and PS4 came out or wherever. I remember trading that in too. But the thing is like, neither Xbox or Sony has done a move so boneheaded yet that, as Benji so put, it has exited the bubble. And I think that's why I'm so excited for this generation, is because we haven't really had a generation since like the PlayStation 2 era, really, where we didn't have someone screw it up. Like we had Sony with just get another job with the PS3, and we had
You sure about that? No, thank you.
We had Microsoft with the Xbox One. Oh, you don't have online? Well, we have a console for you.
And I was like, sure about that? No, thank you.
But like PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, even with COVID, I would love to have seen what this rollout would look like without COVID. If COVID-19 had never happened, this could have been like phenomenal. I have no doubt this would have been the best rollout for next gen, period.
Yeah. I just tweeted about this yesterday, and I was like, I really think both consoles are going to sell really well next gen.
Yeah.
Like, I think Xbox and PlayStation, because we really, like you said, we haven't had that colossal, what is the mess up, right? It feels like every time we come into a generation, someone does something incredibly dumb. We've had small little, okay, whatever, but we haven't had anything where it's like, turned you off to a degree where you're like, do I even want this console? Or like, there's been nothing like that. I feel like we know that both consoles are going to have tons of exclusives. I feel like this is going to be a really good generation. I really, really do. Like, I really feel confident in it.
Yeah. My hope was, I've told Nick this too. I said, I actually think this is probably going to be the gen where we can maybe get away from all the power talk, and it actually starts to be more about what content is being thrown around.
I think in a general rule sense, I agree with you, but
there will always be the people.
There will always be those people.
I just remember. I can't remember. I just got an Xbox One X, and like there was a whole thing about how I got my Xbox One X, did some charity stuff, everything else. I was super happy to get One X as my original Xbox died, and I remember sharing my first screenshot off of it. And just being like, wow, this looks so amazing compared to my OG Xbox One. And someone going, well, it's not actually real 4K because it doesn't have, I'm just like, shut up. Just shut up. I cannot handle, like, if I want tech speculation or tech talk or anything, I go to Digital Foundry. That's it. End of conversation.
Shout out to those guys, by the way. They put up with so much crap. They really do.
I could never do what they do. I could not. Not even just on the knowledge, but yes, the way they handle it. I could never.
They are the best in the business. Shout out to you, Rich, John, Alex. Love all of you. You're fantastic.
Yeah, the fact that like it's to the point now where people are so volatile that John Linneman literally can't tweet out, So I enjoyed a game without people being like,
No, you didn't.
like, it's, yeah. I don't know.
And it's only going to get worse when these new consoles launch for them.
man.
Once they start doing the side-by-side comparisons.
God bless these guys, like comparing the Xbox Series X, PS5, Series S, Xbox One X, PS4 Pro, PS4, Xbox One. God bless you. It's going to be rough.
Yeah, absolutely.
That first batch of games, once we get Assassin's Creed comparisons and Call of Duty and Cyberpunk, their replies are going to be a bloodbath.
Oh man.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna delete Twitter for a month.
Seriously, man.
I kind of want to, in terms of next generation, because we've kind of covered the business aspects and how it's looking logistically. There's kind of something I want to talk about because I feel like in terms of what we got when we upgraded from 360 and PS3 to PS4 and Xbox One, I found that was the most disappointing generational upgrade of anything we really had. Like there was some cool stuff we saw at launch, but it really didn't feel like we started seeing stuff that was like, whoa, this is amazing, till like 2015, 2016. Like my first real like, wow, next generation kind of moment was with like The Order 1886 on PlayStation 4. I was like, whoa, this game would make my PS3 burst into flames if I even thought of running it on there. And like with this generation, we've already seen games release on the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro where it was like, okay, we're already like, we're well past pushing the boundaries of what we're on now. And next generation, like I know it's like a whole controversy of how to get to the upgrade and everything else, but Control on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X is going to be, yeah, that's going to be really good stuff. I just need to pretend 505 Games isn't there.
I'm a sucker. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it.
Hey, fair on you for admitting it. I'm still lying to myself that I'll hold strong. So fair on you.
Sam, you go, I go. I've been hard on 505, and I was like, oh man.
I feel bad for Remedy. I'll put it like I know people at Remedy. I feel bad for Remedy. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Let's put it this way: is we live in an era where like I saw so many people in my feed when that Mario collection was announced. People were like, this is BS. I'm not supporting Nintendo. And I go out to my Switch friends list. I'm like, oh, really? You're not supporting Nintendo, huh? Let's face it. At the end of the day, the business side of stuff can really suck. But if the games are good, the games are good, man. It doesn't matter. Like, and with stuff leading to next generation, like I remember when we did the mid-console generation refresh. I remember when we had the PlayStation Neo and the Scorpio rumors. Everyone was like, oh, 4K on consoles. I was like, yeah, okay. 4K on a video game console. Meanwhile, my Xbox One's doing like 900p right now. I'll believe it when I see it. And then we actually got an experience that was promised. And I kind of did the same thing in 2018 when they were like, ray tracing is the next step on consoles. I'm like, yeah, the NVIDIA card that does ray tracing does 6 frames per second in Metro Exodus. This is going to happen on console, but here we are.
Yeah.
And we're living in this area where the generational upgrade in power, like I don't like to hammer on about power, but like the bang for your buck you're getting with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X can seriously not be understated in comparison to what we even got with the Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro.
Yes, it's such a leap. Go ahead, Benji. Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with your original point on this that like, yeah, I feel like the next gen jump feels, at least just reading the specs, reading what devs are saying, way bigger than going into this gen was from the previous. Like they were so held back by things like the CPU and stuff. Like if you look at the current gen and you look at last gen in game design, there is very little change. There's some, but like we definitely saw a boost in visuals, but there was so much that didn't change because of those CPUs and such that they could not, just cram the horsepower out of. Whereas I know people are upset about the whole cross-gen thing for the first year or two or whatever, but once we get some full-on next-gen only games with these CPUs and these SSDs, I mean, I think we're going to see some pretty incredible stuff.
Oh,
like incredible.
Oh yeah.
I am curious about ray tracing though. I am curious. Like we know there's going to be some. In fact, we've even seen some. I just am curious, like how widely that's going to be used. Because that is one, like you were saying too. Like when they first said, "Oh, ray tracing is going to be a next gen," I kind of didn't buy it that much. I thought maybe limitedly, and I know Digital Foundry kind of felt the same. And we're seeing more than I expected. Like Spider-Man's reflections and stuff look amazing. So I am curious how much that gets pushed next gen ray tracing.
I think, and I'm not a dev. I'm not a dev at all. But I think we're going to see, which is all, and this is already more than I expected. We're going to see smart uses of like applications. We're going to see very smart, like, hey, this is the main character. Make his armor ray traced, and just that, or like, oh, this character, like, make their armor ray traced, or the puddles are all ray traced, or just these reflections, or the cut scenes, or stuff like that. It's not. I think one of the things is going into it, we were coming at it from the PC standpoint of, just turn ray tracing all the way up, just click all the dials, and it looks gorgeous. Don't get me wrong. Like if you don't know what ray tracing looks like, go look at like Digital Foundry's Minecraft video.
Yes, it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
It's utterly mind blowing what Minecraft turns into. But that isn't necessarily what this means. It can just mean a couple of select effects. Don't quote me on this. I think Demon's Souls is using it for like pools of blood and water on the ground, and like the light bouncing around the walls. It's ray traced, and it looks gorgeous. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And that's already more than I expected. So I'm happy. I'm a very happy camper with both of these consoles coming up.
As long as they can maintain that filmic frame rate we've come to love,
I'm gonna smack Jez the next time I see him.
It seems like both really want to avoid like the pitfall of 2013, because I remember like having debates with like friends of mine, and we were talking like and going back and forth with the 900p, the 1080p, and I'm like, why are either one of these consoles struggling in the next gen with 1080p? Was the question I had on both sides, because I'm like, one is handling a little bit better, but it still has its points where it struggles.
Yeah.
And I remember like having a deep gamer argument with a friend of mine, because he was thinking that it could be fixed like on the software side. And I'm like, not that. I said, do you think it's possible this will be the first time we see a console refresh like that? Because I know Nintendo has done it in a way, but I'm like, iterative consoles, there it was. I was like, whoa, that's how you fix it. That's the only way you can go about that, right?
Do you think that happens next gen? Iterative consoles again? Do you think we get a mid-gen? I'm very curious about this.
I do, actually.
I think, so this is one area where Eric and I are usually on point together. This is one area I disagree. I don't think we do. I don't think it's necessary at all. I think the architectural differences of moving to an ultra-fast SSD, the big power leap, the CPU, for God's sake, like, I don't think it's necessary, because I don't think the market is there. I think the market was there for the PS4 and especially the Xbox One, because those consoles were just too safe. They were not well designed in 2013, and it was downhill from there. And they didn't, let's be real. The only real thing they increased was the RAM. Other than that, it was like, okay, whatever. So no, Benji, I don't think we get increases at all. But Eric feels very differently than me, so that's fine.
Eric, what are you thinking? I want to hear.
I think in terms of if there is being that we've had it, I think there's a way, like from a technology push and a cost standpoint, companies will actually absolutely explore it, because they've seen that we will do it. And if they can figure out a way to make it happen and make it make sense, they will try it. That's just kind of how I look at it. Do I want it? No, I don't want it, but
This is one where I genuinely have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea what I think, if there's going to be one or not. I truly have no idea.
Right.
A lot of times I feel like I have a stance I feel pretty confident in taking. I have no idea.
But let me tell you selfishly why I don't want it. And Sam will 100% agree with this. I don't want to hear spec talk again. I don't want to hear any more spec talk.
Eric loves nothing more after a long, difficult work day for me to start talking specs with him. He loves it. Don't let him fool you. There's nothing more than he wants. He wants me to whisper teraflops.
Let me put it this way. if there was a way for Sony or Microsoft midway through this generation to somehow hit a higher visual standpoint,
you know they're gonna do it.
yeah. If there was some way that Sony and Microsoft can somehow hit 8K, somehow they are going to do it because there's these graphical idiots that will go out and buy a new $6,000 TV and another $500 console just so they can be like, wow, the pixels in this game are so great. But I kind of think from the point we're at right now, we're talking like both these consoles have high-end SSDs in them. Like Sony's high-end to the point of I'm really scared of what the storage solution is going to cost for this going forward. But the thing is like I don't know what they could do next past this. Like in 3 years, I could see them dropping the price down of these consoles because the components are going to get cheaper as the SSDs become proprietary and more users adopt them. The price is going to go down and the chips are going to get cheaper and the price will drive down. So eventually they'll be making money on these consoles. I don't think they could do a 3-year refresh on these consoles. I don't think. They could, though, for the simple reason these consoles are $499. If these consoles had been $599, I would have gone, nope, they can't mid-gen refresh this. But since they snuck it into that $499 field, they could. I just don't want them to because you know what? Spec talk every 7 years is better than spec talk every 2 years.
Here's something I want to run past y'all. And I think this is the only way, Benji, the mid-gen refresh makes sense, is if they figure out something equivalent to DLSS.
Yeah.
Because that takes, as great as it takes dedicated hardware. It takes dedicated cores, NVIDIA's Tensor cores, I think, run. If they figure out something like that, but for AMD architecture, yes, I can absolutely see them doing a refresh specifically geared around that. But other than that, I kind of have trouble.
Yeah, it's tough for me. It's like I feel like I could see either way. Like this is one of those I'm just super like, man, I just have no idea because I can see the arguments for both, and both of them make sense to me. Like I could see them doing one because I mean, to be frank, the PS4 Pro and the One X did help late term sales for those consoles. But then you're like, but would a mid-gen refresh? Because these next consoles sound so powerful. It's like, would a mid-gen refresh really carry them that much? I don't know. It's a tough one for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only way they could is if they could find something marketable about it. And that's why I think why the mid-gen refresh worked this time, because they were like, hey, 4K. And that was their big push. All we heard for HDR. Yeah. I cannot say how many people have yelled at me about 4K and HDR with their 1080p monitors over the years. But that was the big marketing push. The thing is like there's things you can market to consumers, and like 4K was really easy marketable because TVs were marketing it.
Yes.
They were like, oh, 4K sports. Look how amazing this looks. You can see the football from across your yard. It's really great. It's a really great marketing point. Thing is things like better ray tracing, 120 FPS, that doesn't really do you a lot of good casual marketing. Your hardcore is going to be like, oh, if you could offer me 120 FPS on everything going forward, maybe. But you can't sell that in a commercial at a bar.
Yes.
You can't. A couple of guys having a beer going, oh, yeah, I can't wait to play FIFA and 120 FPS. It's just, it doesn't work.
Nope.
Well, before we get into like our final next gen, like looking forward topic, do we have any listener Q&As to go over?
Yeah, so I had quite a few people spam the Gaming Perspective Twitter account with questions because everyone had opinions about everything, which is surprising. Twitter people having opinions. So let me pull my phone out here. All right. So the general question that was asked is, when do you guys think these consoles will hit their stride? And what this person meant by stride is similar to PlayStation's 2018 is what they compared it to, is, like God of War and everything else. When do you think these consoles will become must own?
Okay. Benji?
I mean, for the PS5, it's as potentially as soon as year one.
Yeah.
If God of War and Horizon really both make it, you're already there. Yeah. And the counter argument, let's play devil's advocate. The counter argument will be that Horizon is cross-gen. So if you have a PlayStation 4, you technically don't need one. And God of War maybe is. We don't know. We truly have no idea with God of War yet. There's no hint towards anything with that game. So I tend to think it's not. I tend to think that game's next gen only. But there is still, of course, the chance that it could be cross-gen. If those both make it, you're very close to year one on PlayStation 5. If you're not into those two games, you might be pushed a little bit further back. I think my guess for Xbox, outside of Game Pass and third party, right? If we're just talking games you're only going to get here, I'm guessing 2022. I think 2021 is going to be solid, but I have a feeling a lot of those bigger games that we saw get announced that look really, really awesome, at least the concepts, because we haven't seen a ton. I'm guessing some of those start hitting 2022. Early on, like I said, Game Pass and playing third-party games amazing helps. But if we're just talking like the 2018 when they had Spider-Man and God of War, like these big, giant exclusive games, I think that's probably going to be 2022 for Xbox.
Yeah, I definitely agree because like Halo Infinite will be big. I've got my own mixed bag of emotions about Halo and 343 and everything else. But I think the undeniable part of when Xbox will hit its stride is definitely 2022, or mid 2022. Because as soon as we start talking like Hellblade 2, Avowed, things like that, especially when you start talking, where's Starfield gonna land and things like that. Like we've got to start talking about what's Zenimax now going to be bringing to the table. I think late 2021 and early 2022 is really where Xbox is going to hit its stride. And in terms of PlayStation, I've got to give them credit, man. I know Miles Morales isn't a full-fledged Spider-Man 2 and everything else, but man, I just want to get back into that world again. And I was super excited for the fact that I don't have a Series X or a PS5 pre-order because people literally camped for 36 hours at my GameStop to get pre-orders. So I'm being able to play it on PS4 is going to be great, but Demon Souls looks amazing. I don't even like Dark Souls games, and I'm like,
we're dragging you in, man. Eric and I have already made it clear. We're dragging you in with us.
But
yeah, I just want to piggyback. It's like if everything that Sony has announced really hits in that first year, and we'll say the first full 12 months, so counting launch, I mean, it's one of the best first years for any console ever for exclusive games. I mean, it really is one of the best first years I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, Eric, Sam,
Eric.
No, I'll kind of go in where Benji's going. I think that stride gets hit. Yeah, probably around that 2022 mark. Because as we know, it takes the devs a bit of time to really get to know the tools and how these things work. But if some of the things that we've seen already, and look at games like the Medium, and then the potential of the games like Kena and stuff like that, imagine what they're going to be doing, in the next few years. So. Yeah. So I think, I would say about around that time, 2022, definitely into 2022 to 2023.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback what everyone else has said. To be fair, it is especially with God of War, it is the biggest asterisk mark, maybe if with PlayStation. But if those games actually do hit, and if God of War is PS5 only, especially, they have a killer first year. Killer.
Mm-hmm.
Demon Souls, Ratchet and Clank, Spider-Man, Horizon, all
Gran
the other Gran Turismo. If Gran Turismo hits, Returnal from Housemarque, and then God of War, of course, to cap it off. That's a killer year. That's absolutely killer. Xbox, I think, is a little bit further out, but not so much. You're still not waiting a long time. I think for them, the big question is now, when does Starfield arrive?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a holiday game next year? And if that's the case, that's when they start to take off. Because if Starfield is really next year and it's good and it's Xbox PC exclusive, that's going to ignite a fire for them. I'm not telling you Avowed is definitely 2022 right now, but it probably is definitely 2022. So Avowed is going to be good. Obsidian, especially now, Obsidian is going to be like, okay, we have to make sure we're competing with Bethesda to put the best RPG out there. Hellblade 2, that's going to be absolutely insane. I have no idea what Ninja.
Oh my god, I'm so excited.
That game, still, in my opinion, one of, if not the best reveal trailer we've had.
That's amazing, yeah.
It's incredible. That's going to be 2022. So yeah, PlayStation ostensibly is first as quick as next year. Xbox 2022. We're not going to be waiting a long time. They've got their. It's back to what I said earlier. Their markets narrowed down. They know what they're doing, and they're going to get there real quick.
If you had to bet, what do you think is the big Xbox 2021 game outside of Halo? Now that Halo's been delayed, what do you think they had lined up? Because you had to think that they, in their minds, thought Halo was going to be 2020, so they were kind of road mapping something for 2021. What's your hunch? What do you think is that 2021 game?
Eric, if you or Nick want to take this first, I'll bite my tongue. But
no, I'm saying you want to go because I'm thinking like I don't know.
Okay,
I'm thinking it might be Starfield potentially.
Pre-pandemic, pre-Zenimax acquisition, I think their holiday game honestly was the new Forza Motorsport. I think that was holiday 2021. Now it's Starfield.
I think that might make next fall. Maybe.
Maybe. It's a big maybe. The pandemic has thrown such it cannot be overstated what a monkey wrench that has thrown it. Development. Different studios are taking it in different strides. We'll see. Potentially Starfield next year. And also, I just want to put this out there into the ether here. Arcane has, been working on games, but Arcane Lyon developed, which is the French studio, co-developed Wolfenstein Youngblood last year. Arcane Lyon also helped with Fallout 76's writing. They did some of the writing for it. And they're the ones making Deathloop, which comes out next year. So here's the question. They have a Texas studio as well. What have they been working on a new Prey or a new?
I would die.
I just want to put it out there. I'm not telling you I have inside info or anything, but I'm just saying. Up until 2019, they worked hand in hand, and all of a sudden, it's just been the French team putting out all these projects.
That's a great point.
Just want to put it out there that Texas studio has been working on something. So,
please let Prey 2 happen, please.
Oh God, Prey is. You want to talk underrated games this generation? My God, Prey is one of the most brilliantly designed in terms of level design, in terms of the lore, in terms of everything. I will restrain myself to keep from talking about that too much, but
I wonder too, like if maybe it's something that hasn't been like announced yet. Because I know like Compulsion's been kind of quiet.
Yep.
Good point.
The initiative obviously goes without saying.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. There's the initiative. Where does In Exile stand right now? I know like Wasteland.
They put out Wasteland 3, and I think they have a second team cooking, don't they?
So In Exile has two studios. They have the major one in California and then a smaller support team in Louisiana. I should visit them sometime. They're in my neck of the woods. But they've actually been very blunt and said that after Wasteland 3 is going to get some DLC, but they are working on a new RPG in Unreal 5.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't think it's going to be soon, to be clear.
Yeah, I think it's far away.
I think that's like 2023, honestly.
I think that's just pre-production right now. I'm guessing. Yeah,
I think they're just being honestly, to get ahead of the questions. They're like, yes, we're working on it. Please leave us alone.
Right.
So there's them. But yeah, no. Now Zenimax is definitely the question mark at this point.
I will counter everyone here, and I will throw Fable in as the big 2021 game.
Ooh, bold, and I like it.
Because Playground has been doing this since I started games writing in 2017. This RPG team's been a thing.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that in 4 years they couldn't put out a game? And it's Playground too. Let's keep it in perspective. Playground is phenomenal. I cannot wait to see what they do. I have a feel like if we live in a world where we get Fable, Halo Infinite, and Starfield in the same year, I will explode into a little ball of RPG FPS.
Hey, it's spicy. I like it.
It's spicy. I will throw out this one thing and one thing only. I willed Baldur's Gate 3 into existence. I am willing. I am absolutely willing for id Software to mend the barrier with Carmack and do a Quake remake as soon as physically possible.
Yeah.
As soon as possible. As soon as I saw Carmack tweet, hey, I really like the guys over at Xbox. They really understand creative freedom. I'm like, Quake? Quake?
You know what this conversation's making me think, though? That's interesting, and it's a good problem to have now that you bring up Fable. Microsoft's in a spot where they have so many RPGs coming that they have to consider what years to release them so they don't eat each other alive. They're going to have Fable. They're going to have Starfield. They're going to have an Exile RPG eventually. They're going to have Obsidian with 1 or 2 RPGs. They're going to have, it's going to be just RPG madness.
Yeah, and you know the Outer Worlds 2 is going to be a thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yes,
100%. Happening. So, I guess you could put out one in the spring, one in the fall, give them space.
This is such an opposite conversation of Xbox in 2017. It was well, they can put out a game anywhere. And now it's just okay, so we gotta give this some breathing room. We gotta do this some breathing room. We gotta do that. This is the things I love to hear is we have so many games, we don't know where we're going to release them. I'm just saying, yep, okay, yeah, we're here. We're here for all of this.
I'll spin off before we have any other community questions. And you don't have to answer if you don't want, but I want to put this out there to y'all because this is something I started thinking about earlier today. At E3 2018, which I was at, it was an amazing experience, Phil Spencer said that they wanted to have the industry's leading first party. Even with all the studio acquisitions they made, even with picking up Obsidian and In Exile and then Double Fine next year, great pickup in 2019, I was like, okay, no, you're on par now maybe. You're competing, but you're not you don't lead the industry. What about now? What do y'all think?
This is tough.
Yeah, I know, because it's not a list war conversation. I hate
right.
But this is if you like RPGs, if you like shooters, it has to enter the conversation.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the problem because then, I'm in one hand, I'm Naughty Dog, and then in the other hand, I'm id Software, and I'm I don't know where to go.
Here's what I'll say. Definitely, it made it. No matter what, it made it way closer. Sure. No matter what, like you said, before the Zenimax purchase, I would still definitely put Sony quite a bit ahead of them.
Absolutely.
But everyone, I really love Sony first party. Their games are made to talk to me. My 3 favorite games this year, one's not a first party game, but they're all currently PlayStation exclusive. It's Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Those are my 3 favorite games this year so far. So. But I love RPGs. And once you're talking Elder Scrolls, here's what I'll say. If Bethesda Game Studios, proper Bethesda Game Studios, is back to being very, very good, if we're getting some high quality, if Starfield's amazing, if Elder Scrolls 6 is amazing, wow. Yeah, it's interesting. You can make the argument. I think it also will somewhat come down to what kind of games you're into, because they do feel different still. Like we talked about, Sony has the big Hollywood blockbuster type feel. But yeah, if you're into RPGs specifically, especially outside of just Japanese ones, Microsoft's making a hard play for your wallet.
Yeah. If I could say, I'm kind of in agreement with Split In, and I kind of liken this to. If I can do the sports analogy thing, it's putting together a draft team.
Mm-hmm.
You're on paper, man. I had Tom Brady in his prime. I have, Terrell Owens. I have, and you're looking down I'm going to destroy it. And then a guy that's putting together with backups and everything else kills you. You just never know. It's on paper it looks good, but you have to start. It looks like it's going to be beautiful. I think it's going to be beautiful. But until you have tangible, it's
right.
That's where you go from there. And I think that's why I think that's why, in a lot of ways, if you look at like what Sony has done, they have a little bit more grace in the whole aspect of mind share equity because of what they delivered. You can, and it's just like anything else, you can lose that depending on your messaging and your output and what you do. But Microsoft still has that way to go. Like, they're putting all the pieces together. Now we got to put them on the field and see how they play together,
right?
And see what delivered. Let's start getting some championships under our belt.
This was absolutely the generation where Sony hit their execution stride.
Oh yeah,
like maybe you can make an argument for the types of games. You can make an argument for diversity. You can't make an argument on execution. In my opinion,
they nailed it.
They put it out there. That's all there is.
My biggest.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Benji.
I was just gonna say I agree. My biggest gripe with Sony this gen, and it's a interesting gripe because I just said the games they make speak to me hardcore, but I think you can, if you were going to just make one, criticism of Sony, I think you can criticize variety a bit. Their games are they're different settings, but those Sony first party games are going to be story. They're going to be third person 99% of the time. They're going to be people joke about the Sony template, but there is a little bit of truth to it. There is a bit of a truth to it.
Absolutely.
If you were going to make one complaint from just their first party, I'm not talking about like exclusives from other studios, just specifically the PlayStation teams, the variety would be the one spot where you're like, maybe throw a few other, because Killzone outside of launch, they had like no first person shooters for the rest of the gen, basically, because Killzone went over to, Guerrilla went over to Horizon. So if you were to kind of make one complaint, I think that's the only thing you can really say, but their execution was excellent.
Yeah. So what we're saying, Sony, if you're listening to this, is bring back Resistance and we'll be okay.
To piggyback on that though, and I never really made the correlation with like everyone always made the Sony first party template joke all the time to me, and I kind of never I kind of got it, but I was like, it's still really different enough where I don't really notice it. I don't really care. It really hit me with Days Gone though, and I was just like, man, this scene feels like I'm playing the original The Last of Us. Did you guys just? And that was the only first party Sony game that just didn't click with me, because it was just like I played it at launch, which was my mistake because I kept falling through the map. I go 5 frames per second. It was rough. But the fact that they only put out one game where I was like, that's not good. That's impressive.
Yeah, and I came to that game way later than everyone, way later, and it was all completely patched and great, and I platinumed it, and I loved Days Gone, and I was in this weird spot because I was when I played it, I had almost no bugs or anything. It ran great. And I was playing, I'm like, man, this game is great. What's everyone talking about? And I had so many people you should have been there at launch. It's not the same as it is now in terms of bugs and stuff.
No, I'm with you. I platinumed it. I got the platinum as well. I really enjoyed it, but it was something at launch. I'll put it that way. It was something.
And interestingly enough, I have not played it yet. I played all the other Sony first party stuff. I have not played Days Gone. Part of it was from what Nick and Sam were saying, and I was like, and I just kind of waited. But then other stuff started hitting, so I kind of put some of the other games ahead of it. But I'm fully planning on doing it soon.
I'll say
because also too, it's open world fatigue. Once you play one, it's I need a palate cleanser because these games you had The Last of Us and you had Ghost of Tsushima right behind each other. It was I need a break. These games are, So yeah, but I'm looking forward to jumping into it.
Yeah, when you play it early on, the characters might not click. They might feel a little Just stick with it. I think you'll end up liking the characters a lot more as you get further in the game. At first, they are these hard-nosed, they almost feel a little bit like caricatures. But I ended up really liking Deacon and some of the other casts. So if you stick with it, I think they do get a lot better further in the game.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Nick, before final little wrap up here, we had one more community question, if you're okay with that.
Yep.
So, and we may as well address this. This is kind of the other elephant in the room, so to speak, and that is from Glorious War. If Sony had to buy a publisher, who do you think it would be?
Ooh.
if it was in terms of publishers, I think what would make the most sense to me personally is they would most likely snatch up Square Enix, and that's not to protect Square Enix from Microsoft. That's to protect Square Enix from Tencent.
Yep.
Interesting.
I kind of agree. Interesting on the Tencent angle. I think for me, honestly, it's more of just, how do I put this? Sony is in this weird juxtaposition where they have that history with JRPGs. They obviously did the original PlayStation and Final Fantasy VII. I mean, come on. I don't need to explain that. What that did and everything from there. But also, their teams have gotten increasingly Western over time, and they don't, outside of like Polyphony and Japan Studio doing their little thing, they don't actually have that JRPG core that they used to. So I think because of that, Square Enix probably would make the most sense by far.
Yep, I'd agree.
Yep, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, I'll put something out there. I've seen a lot of people really driving for this one. For the love of God, Sony does not need to buy Konami. Just stop. They have a handful of really good IPs and a whole lot of other nonsense Sony does not want to deal with. I guarantee. I would bet money that you'll see licensing come into play here. There's no, maybe even IP ownership. I don't see anyone outright buying Konami because no one wants to deal with the pachinko machines. It's the same thing when everyone was talking up the Sega rumor. I was like,
exact same thing.
No one wants to deal with the gambling, the resorts, and all the other weird diversifying things they did when like Sega's consoles bottomed out. They had to diversify and do a bunch of other stuff. It's the same kind of thing.
And this is the thing with actually a lot of the Japanese publishers in general. You see people like begging, get this Japanese publisher. Almost all of them come with something like that, where it's like, I mean, Square Enix has cafes and stuff. It's like there's so much. They're very different than a lot of the Western publishers, where they're like really focused on, if they are branched out at all, it's to like mobile, but like that's about it. It's like mobile and games. Like you don't see a lot of other random businesses thrown in there, but so many of the Japanese publishers just have their hands in all kind. I mean, even Sony's doing like insurance and stuff. It's just a very different type of thing than what you see in a lot of the Western publishers. But yeah, I think if they were to get one, Square Enix makes the most sense, but I still don't think it's going to happen. But that would be the one. That would be the one I think that would be the best fit for Sony.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just can't wrap my head around the fact that Phil Spencer wanted to buy a Japanese studio, so he spent $7.5 billion to get Tango Games.
Yeah, just to get Tango.
Just clung on, like, take us with you.
Like, shout out to Xbox for saying they're letting Bethesda go through the hoops to buy a Japanese game development studio, and all the hoops they had to jump through to purchase them, just for Microsoft to be like, okay, now that you guys have done that, we're going to buy you. But yeah, Japan's such a interesting, like how they do business and everything else is a whole different
very different.
It's very different. And if there was a company that could do it, Sony would be the one because they are localized. But even then, I just don't see with how much partnership they have with Square Enix, it would make sense. But I'm not sure it's the best financial investment. I think you're going to see Sony dump a ton of money into services in the next couple of years. But that's a conversation for a different day. Sam, we have the wrap-up point there you were talking about there?
Yeah, so our wrap-up, I guess, is just a general looking forward to next gen. What is it we still don't know that we would like to know moving forward? What, like, because let's call a spade. This has been a rough year. It's been a weird year. And God Almighty, I miss E3 with everything.
Yes. Oh, God.
I can't. I'm just coming at it from a reporter angle, but the gamer angle is equally valid. I can't do this again. I just can't. I need all the craziness contained to 1 week. Like, put it all there and end it. Enough. Let me sleep the next week. I can't do the summer game mess again. So what is it for both Microsoft and Sony that you want to know moving forward? That's our last topic.
Here. Do you care? Anyone care if I go first?
By all means, please.
Okay. So one for each. For Microsoft, for me, the biggest unknown that I want to know from them is I want to see how all these awesome announcements, what the games actually look like. And I understand why we don't yet. Like, it's not a bash on them. Like, why haven't I seen Fable and Avowed and things like that? Because they're far off. But like so many of Microsoft's really cool announcements, we've seen basically nothing of besides a logo. So, or just like a quick CG snippet. So for me, for Microsoft, the thing I'm most excited to see, probably next year sometime, is how some of these, brand new first party games actually look like, what I'm actually going to be playing. And then for Sony, my biggest question is how PS Now is going to improve next gen. What they're going to do to make that service better, because its growth is pretty slow, to be honest with you, considering how long it's been around. And yes, they are still growing. It's not like a service that's decreasing in subscribers, but it's not really blowing up either. It's just kind of slowly building. I would love to see what Sony's going to do to make PS Now a lot more attractive next generation.
Valid stuff.
I'm not even subscribed to it, and I'm a giant gamer.
Yeah, no, I get you.
I'm not either.
Like it. Yeah. I know they went from but that's the thing. After so many years, they were only around 700,000 subscribers, somewhere in that ballpark. And then they did get to about 2.1, 2.3, whatever million. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's somewhere around there, because they started putting in okay, here's Spider-Man for 4 months. Here's God of War for 4 months. And their CEO, Kenichiro Yoshida, explicitly called that out. So they've got to be doing something. They can't completely ignore it, but it also feels like, to me, they're in this weird place of, we don't want to go full in. We don't want to put God of War, Ragnarok, Thor Boogaloo, whatever that ends up being, in there day one. We don't want to put Forbidden West in there day one. So how else do you enhance it?
Yep, that's my biggest question.
I do not have the answer. I just think it's a valid question.
Yeah. I'll jump in real quick.
Sure.
For me, actually, it was sort of what we were talking about a moment ago. Is I kind of want to see portfolio-wise, what Sony may have planned to kind of, like you said, expand and diversify from the template. What do they have, to kind of show? And I know people call for multiplayer, and I said the multiplayer side of it is kind of interesting because we have so many third parties that do that well.
Yeah.
How do you jump in and find a way to compete with that? Of course, I'm not a pub, I'm not a dev. I don't know. So, but if you have a base that's calling for something, then maybe you need to explore it in some way, right? So I'd like to see how they diversify. And then with Microsoft, I know, even with the signing, I kind of still want to see them push a little bit more for new IP, because I know we've been talking about the deal, with Bethesda and everything, and what they have in their portfolio. But I kind of want to see the push into what can you introduce that's new? Because I think that's kind of what was lacking for them this gen, and I think if Microsoft would have kind of went back in and brought some sequels to some of the things that they did, it probably wouldn't have felt as stretched out. It wouldn't have hurt as much, because they would have been kind of giving some of those fans, even if they didn't do well, those games, an answer to that. So I kind of want to see what they do with that.
That's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, you want to go?
Actually, I was going to ask if you want to go.
Aha, Canadian conundrum. But I'll go. So with PlayStation, the big question mark I have isn't really necessarily important, other than the fact I'm a big proprietor of I like old games. I know that's a controversial thing to say in 2020, but I go back and play a majority of my old titles, my 360, my OG Xbox, a ton of old PC titles all the time. Playing Baldur's Gate 2 in 2020, for God's sakes. But the thing is PlayStation's messaging on backwards compatibility is so convoluted and so up in the air right now, and especially with, we've got a Spider-Man remaster, but it's backwards compatible, but it does this, but it won't do that, and things like that. And we've got a rumored Bloodborne remaster and everything else. It's just, I want to know what I'm getting with BC. I'm not mad if it's just, you can put your games in, play it, that's it. I'm fine with that. Just tell me what it is. That's all I want to know. And in terms from what I want from Xbox is I want a little bit, I understand why we haven't seen a lot of stuff, but I want them to give a roadmap, but I want them to be careful with a roadmap, if that makes sense. Because like there's certain games that they've shown off already that I feel they showed off too soon. And like we didn't need to see them. Like an example is I'm a massive State of Decay fan. I didn't need that CG teaser of State of Decay 3. I know that game's not coming till 2023.
Yeah.
But now I'm sitting there thinking about it going, man, I really want that game for the next 3 or 4 years. It was a frustration I had with PlayStation, but I don't necessarily want Xbox going into that. I think there's a good balance between having a roadmap and setting things too far out. And I just hope that Xbox is careful with how they execute that, if that makes sense. And I just have concerns about that going forward.
Yeah, that's fair. So, yeah, I guess you've all addressed very valid points. I guess so for me, from Microsoft, we talked about this before. I don't want to see them become Sony, but I do want them to take a stab at that blockbuster formula. I'm not saying get everybody on it. Please don't. Like, you're doing your thing. I rock with you on the RPGs and the shooters, please, all day, every day. But you can try to make one game, like an Uncharted or a Last of Us. You can try one blockbuster. You can try one big, sad dad game. Give me a big Hollywood third-person production that I can turn my brain off and really just sink into. And I
agree.
Just one. Like maybe that's what the initiative is doing. Maybe it'll be someone else. Whoever it is, just give me one. From Sony, I want to see them, and I think they're starting to do this, but I don't know, with God of War, I'm a little apprehensive. Stop announcing games like 4 years in advance. Like stop your entire lineup long into the future. Your 2021, it's fine. You don't need anything else as far as I'm concerned, as long as all those games hit. Just take it on a more steady basis and don't give us this pressure of, oh yeah, Last of Us Part 2 is coming in 4.5 years.
That was probably announced a little too early.
It was definitely announced too early.
Yeah.
And it's the most extreme example, but I'm proving a point here. Like, so bear with me. Just you've got your strengths, play to them. And as far as I'm concerned, you should both have the best generation ever, really. Like you're primed for it.
You just wait until that remake engine hits, Sam.
And Sam, can I say one thing to your point? Because I definitely agree with you on like the big blockbuster. And don't be afraid to just let it be a single player game.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And leave it at that. I know like they get goofed on for having to have the campaign side and then the multiplayer side, or you do it like how we're about to get with Ghost of Tsushima. Like you introduce that single player portion and then later maybe you have like a co-op portion.
I have no problem with that. To be clear, I have no issues with a single player game and then your co-op mode like dropping later. That's perfectly fine.
Dude, I had high hopes. That's what the Initiatives game was going to be, and now I'm starting to have doubts about it.
Why is that?
I don't know. Just if it really is Perfect Dark, I can't really see Perfect Dark, even if it's third person, being a The Last of Us or Ghost of Tsushima, or I just feel like that IP doesn't lend itself well to that. I mean, I'm not saying that I think it's going to be a bad game. It could be amazing. And I could see it being more of like an Uncharted where it has like, it's cinematic and stuff, but it has like a bit of a, fun vibe to it. I was hoping, though, that it might be a little bit more darker and that really intense AAA type. But I still think it's going to be a big AAA game and stuff. But I think it might be not quite what I was hoping it was going to be if it really is Perfect Dark.
Right. And yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm weird. I'm one of those people. I play a single player game, and I'm like, man, this game would be so much better with co-op. And now my friends just look at me and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" Like I remember playing The Last of Us with my roommate, and I just remember looking at him and going, "What if you could play the girl?" And he's like, "No, bro, why? Why would you ruin this game with co-op?" I'm like, "No, it'd be dope." Right? And he's like, "No, just shut up." And I'm constantly that guy.
Last thing before we close here, asymmetrical co-op hasn't been explored enough. Please do more of it. Co-op where it's not equal, where you have like one with different advantages and like you have to play completely different and help each other. Like Game devs, like, that's a free one. Take it. Run with it.
I will also counterpoint you that is someone give Moon Studios the Battle Block Theater IP and let them have fun.
Sounds like their next game is going to be big.
Oh, that game is going to be huge.
Sounds exciting.
Moon is one of a handful of devs where I just need to see the studio logo. I'm like, okay, yep, we're good. Yep. We're in. Let's talk.
They have earned my trust.
Yep.
Yeah, so we will close things up here after running for 2 hours. So that was a fantastic conversation about next generation, Zenimax, and just about everything else going on right now. So we'll get right to outros. We'll start with Benji. Where can people find you?
Hello. Thanks for an amazing conversation. Loved being on. Thanks for having me back. 2 ways to get a hold of me. The number one place is on Twitter. I'm at Benji-Sales on Twitter. That's definitely where I'm the most active. I'm on there, all day, every day, unfortunately. So that is the easiest way to get a hold of me. But also, I am on YouTube, and I am Benji-Sales on YouTube as well. We do a live stream over there once, sometimes twice a week. Real interactive. It's a live chat. We break things down, break down the news, talk about it mostly from a sales and business perspective, but try to make it fun and interesting. And then we also just talk about gaming news in general.
Absolutely. I definitely recommend checking out his stuff. He's a great follow on Twitter. It makes me understand financials. I'm dense as hell. So his Twitter and YouTube channel is linked in the description below. So go ahead, check him out and all the great work he does. And speaking of someone else who does great work around here, Sam, where can people find the amazing work you do, my friend?
Yeah, unfortunately, you can still find me on Twitter at Samuel Talbot.
It feels like that every day, doesn't it?
Just wake up, pull Picard, damage report.
You go you look down the time like, I hate it here. Why am I still here?
I'm facetious. It is what it is.
Right.
I'm at Samuel Talbert, TOLBERT. Come yell at me. Come talk with me. Happy to do it. I write over at Windows Central and its sister sites, Android Central, iMore, covering all the news because we had no E3. It doesn't stop. It never stops. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun this fall.
I've gotten so many gray hairs this year because it just hasn't stopped. It has not stopped.
You're afraid to go to sleep.
No, literally just
and the Xbox Series S leaks. So yes, I am afraid.
Legitimately, yes. I had to get up for work at like 4:30 a.m. and I'm just heading to bed, and it's like Brad Sams is like, "Hey, here's the Xbox Series S." I'm like, "I'm not going to sleep. I'm writing an article." Eric, where can people find you, my friend?
Oh yeah, let me first say, Benji, thanks for coming through. It's always great to have you, bro.
Awesome. Thank you.
And great show, guys. Lots of information, lots of ground to cover. I think the fact that we got it in a little under 2.5 hours, pretty impressive. But no, you can find me on Twitter, EC Jackson with an X, and that's pretty much where I hang out. And if I'm not there, Wednesday nights, Brat Podcast at 9:00.
Absolutely. And I'm Nicholas Downey. You can find me on Twitter at Undead3XVI, where you'll find a absolute mess of articles, reviews, previews, and I don't sleep. It's fine. And I've just completely normalized it at this point. You can find all my work over at lordsofgaming.net. Got some cool stuff coming for the weekend and everything else, because once again, don't sleep. So it's a great time. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Gaming Perspective podcast. We have another episode next week at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. We'll be joined by the man of a million himself, Randall Thor. So I hope you guys will tune in for that episode, as well as we talk all things Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and Stadia, baby, because Baldur's Gate 3 is coming, and that's the only way I can play it. So we'll see you guys next time. Appreciate all the love and support, and we will catch you guys next week at Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Bye for now. Yeah.